or these warrior talents are pretty sweet, chat. These are looking quite solid. Yeah, so I guess I'm like talking to a few of you guys for the first time. All right, now it's here now, so we can probably do some introductions. So why don't you guys let me turn my music off here. Why don't you guys tell the stream what you guys are all about, where they can find you, stuff like that, starting with PlkaTV with an L though.
Yeah, for sure. Hello, everyone. My name is PlkaTV. I'm a streamer on twitch.tv slash PlkaTV, and my content revolves around high-end warrior play. I'm currently a DPS main in the top 100 guild in the Ascent on NA, as well as playing Protection Warrior, good or bad, in High Mythic Plus. Also, over on YouTube, I make guides for Protection Warrior as well as dungeon guides for the season. I'm super ecstatic to be here and thankful for the opportunity to talk about the Dragonflight Warrior Tree. So yeah, thanks a lot. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I actually didn't even know you DPS'd. I asked my chat, like, oh, I think they might have mentioned it, but I was like, dude, I need like a Prot Warrior through and through. Like, I got the people that I know play Prot Warrior and they've played it at a high level, but I need like an absolute Prot Warrior. And they were like, dude, this guy's the shit. Like, you should invite this guy. I didn't even, but the reason why I'm saying this is if you want to like comment or talk about, if you're really passionate about DPS Warrior as well, feel free to do that during the other talk. Usually I have the, like, Prot was going to go first, and usually the Prot people leave because we're going to talk about DPS, but if you want to stay, that's entirely up to you. That'd be fine.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I don't mind. I think like being DPS main is something that a lot of protection warriors actually do for Mythic Plus because it's not always the best choice when you're doing progression rating to get in as a protection warrior. So just having that, like, you know, be able to get the gear as a DPS main and then going over to Mythic Plus to do protection warrior is like a good fit. And I think for Mythic Plus, any really good Mythic Plus tank needs to see the DPS side of it in order to understand like how to tank properly to fit your DPS and vice versa.
Yeah, definitely. There's also most of the better tanks at like the top of the world rankings are all DPS mains that are tanking because it was necessary to. It's like just in general having like a background as tank coming from a DPS thing has proven to be very successful. So that's awesome. All right, and Danwarr.
Yeah. Yo, my name is Dan. Warrior player for Method. I do stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/Dan_war. I've been playing Warrior now pretty much consistently since, End of Mists, really, sort of Throne of Thunder, Siege of Orgrimmar times, so lots of knowledge. My knowledge about the older stuff does fade over time because I'm old, but yeah, no, very, very happy to always talk about Warrior for sure.
Sweet. And then now and Scott, people know it's up. Well, I guess it'll probably be a YouTube video, just in case people are unfamiliar.
Hello, guys.
All right, so that's now, and then Scott.
You.
All right, cool.
I thunderclap.
Yeah, I also of the classes that I have played recently, I did do the MDI Global Finals at the end of BFA as Prot Warrior, but I have not played it one time this expansion. I played Arms back in the day, never played Fury. So just in case people are wondering like where my takes are coming from, I'm a very strong believer in, I think the class design of Prot was excellent in Battle for Azeroth, and part of the reason of why they have been so not thought of as powerful this expansion as were due to design decisions going into Shadowlands to nerf how they were in BFA, but they nerfed the gameplay instead of the actual power level, which was unfortunate. Okay, so that's basically it. So how we're going to do this is Scott and Naowh have been here before, but what we do is we go through the class tree and kind of talk about the decisions we make. I like to stop at 8 when we go to the second tier, stop at 20 when we go to the third tier, if possible. Sometimes you need to take much more stuff earlier than that. Totally fine. Doesn't mean the tree is bad or anything. And then we talk about the decision makings. We usually do this one spec at a time. Although I'm looking at this and it seems like the general class tree, it seems like Arms and Fury are going to be very similar, right? It's just going to change like a little bit of the pathing and like a few nodes, but it's largely the same, right?
Generally,
yeah,
yes.
much.
Generally, it's going to be the core components of Warrior. You know, you bring in the raid components like Rally and Cry, your defensives, Die by the Sword, Spell Reflect. All the main components are in the main Warrior tree. So they're going to look pretty similar. I think right now, they said they want to kind of rework the right side of the tree because the left side of the tree, like, everything is good. No matter what spec you want to play, you're kind of hinting at the left side, right? And the right side's kind of weak. But right now, yeah, no matter what spec you're playing, it's going to look somewhat similar with a little bit of changes.
All right, cool. So the reason why I wanted to ask is because usually we build all 3 specs. I think we can save a lot of time and kind of build Arms and Fury at the same time and talk about the differences, or just build like Arms, and then instead of rebuilding a full Fury tree, we'll just, you know, talk about like what would actually change there, because I think Prot is also going to run into a similar issue. So before we actually even fill out the trees, though, I just want to talk about things that exist for all 3 specs and just kind of hear your all's takes on it from the tree, just things that are in the class tree specifically that are new that they added. We'll all do the spec stuff later, so just to give you guys an idea of time frame, you know, after we do the initial class tree talk, we're going to talk about Prot Warrior exclusively, the spec tree, and then the Prot Warriors are going to leave, and then we are specifically going to talk about the Fury and Arms trees after that. I will probably, Dan, until Critcake gets here, I'll probably have you run down both of the spec. Did you get it? You got alpha yesterday, right? Or no, you've had alpha.
Yeah, I've had alpha. Yeah, I've
good.
been having alpha.
Nice. And then you've had a chance to, like, you feel comfortable running down both Fury and Arms?
Yeah, 100%.
Perfect. Okay. And then we'll have Pika actually run down the Prot tree, and then we'll have Naowh and Scott commentate. But until then, let's talk about things that were added. So, or actually even before things were added, you started alluding to this. Prot Warriors are in such a unique position with class trees compared to every other class, where usually classes are deciding between whether you want throughput capstones or utility capstones, and, like, you know, just making your class better at, like, you know, just you're choosing the really powerful utility at the bottom. There's been mixed results for both of these, although the ones with utility at the bottom are generally more favored. You guys have both. This is like unprecedented. You have very strong throughput, both in the, you know, the 2-point nodes for dual wielding and like a single 2-handed weapon. And then you have like your Kyrian Spear, you have Avatar, and then the right side, it's like Shockwave and then Rumbling Earth. And like, how do you guys feel about, you know, at the bottom of this capstone tree, kind of getting whatever you want, but at the same time, it's like, why am I having to choose between Shockwave down here with all these damage talents?
So in terms of our capstones, like, I mean, like, just going over the tree in general, like, this is the first time it's like the era of choice, like the first time where Prot Warrior actually kind of has a choice, right? If you look at like Shadowlands BFA, you've always had, oh, well, this is the talent tree, this sucks, this is great, this sucks, this is great, right? But in this tree specifically, you have so much choice in, you know, am I going to raid? Is it Tyrannical week? Is it Fortified week? Is it Necrotic? Like, every single thing like plays a role for what you kind of choose in your tree here. But it's like a fantastic thing to see where you can get Shockwave and Stormbolt, right? We haven't had that for the longest time. And the more stops you have, the better it is. But like, yeah, again, you have Spear. You kind of going back to the BFA era of Thunderclap being godlike, because right now we've had the entire expansion where Thunderclap hits like a wet noodle. So many times where I hit Thunderclap in a big group of mobs, you see your Warlock immolating, you see your DPS starting to go wild, like the monk going, oh, I just wanted to put 1 stack of my spin to win button. And they would just grab aggro, right? But this tree is very reminiscent to the BFA era of let's clap to win, right? So yeah, it's really great to see so much choice and variation in our tree. And right now, like I said before, the left side is super good. The right side needs a little bit of work. And there are some talents here and there which kind of are completely useless, like Kafanis Roar in the middle, where Intimidating Shell can withstand 200% more damage before breaking. Like, that's just a talent that just no one's ever going to use, but it's also not in the way of anything. So
this is a theme. Tree. So this is a theme throughout a lot of different class trees where they have had things like roots or fears or things like that. They have a tangent node where they can withstand more damage. I think it's like intended to be like a PvP thing, because like in PvE, like if it breaks 2 seconds later, that doesn't matter, because the reason you use the button was to stop what they're doing now, not necessarily CC them. And it's the same thing with kicks, and I believe DPS Warriors also got this. I don't know where it is on the tree, but you guys got the ability to get like a damage increase when you pummel every 30 seconds. There's clearly a thing going on in a lot of other trees where if you're ever kicking, they want you to be able to select a node alongside your kick that makes you feel rewarded for kicking. And I think Warriors might have gotten one of the strongest ones. So that's something we'll look at later as well. Yeah, I just think, like, do you guys feel... Yeah, like they said they're going to work on the right side of the tree. So we're not going to spend like too much time on this. I just found it really strange that like if you just wanted to get all your throughput down here, you could. But then you're not really choosing between much after that. What does it feel like, Dan, for like a DPS Warriors perspective on like what you're able to get and then how much choice you have before we build it?
Overall, you really don't feel like you have that much choice. I can't even in M+, I can't think of any situation where you're going to actively want to come down and take Shockwave. I mean, even reading it here, it's possibly one of the weakest AoE stuns I think we're going to have in the game. A 2-second cooldown only. Like, you're either going to DR much better stuns at the very start with something that only lasts 2 seconds, or if they're already DR'd, it's going to last for, like, what, point something of a second? And not to mention that, as you said before, on the left side of the tree in particular, you've got Spear of Bastion and then Elysian Might, which, while people don't like it because it's incredibly restrictive with having to stand inside the spear, it is still incredibly strong, no matter how you look at it, even if Spear is going to be on a 1-minute CD, which we'll get into it later, but it kind of messes up with a lot of the Arms and Fury talents and cooldowns, especially now. And then you've got Avatar leading into Signet, and again, Signet's not a lot of people's favorite, but they have said they are going to work on changing Signet, and there are 2 ways that I think that they could do it, which we can get into it later on, probably when we get down there.
Yeah.
But again, it's just incredibly strong, because both Arms and Fury are going to, assuming Ravager procs it, both Arms and Fury are going to have 2 ways at least to proc Signet. So it's going to have a lot of use, whether it's single target or AoE.
Yeah, and I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Continue.
So I was just going to say they're just both incredibly busted, and then you've got like Thunderous Roar on the other side, which I think has very niche value. It like maybe a sort of bleed-based arm spec potentially, but also on that side you have dual wield spec, which is only ever going to be good for Fury and like an absolute must take, which is also annoying because it's 2 points, 4 points even in total. You've got to throw in on the right side of the tree when you want to get all the good stuff on the left side of the tree, which is just so horribly placed.
Okay, nice. And then other bits of like utility and new things you guys are gaining is you guys are getting Berserker Shout, which I believe is not a correct tooltip on Wowhead. It's not 2 buttons, it's 1 button. When you press Berserker Rage, anyone in your party or raid? Is it party? I think it's party.
Supposed to be party.
It's supposed to be just party. So it's not like a Tremor Totem. It's on a 1-minute cooldown. You can use it reactively because you can use it to break yourself out of a fear to get people in your party after it. Potentially some kind of use in Mythic Plus, but I think the fact that it's only for 5 people in raid is highly unlikely that it would be a talent that is useful. Probably more of a PvP thing, but I think something that's also cool. They also brought this is kind of interesting. I want to hear your all's take on Blood and Thunder coming back.
Pretty sick.
Yeah, in terms of a protection point of view, if you're playing that right now in alpha, that's actually Prot Warrior's top DPS in AoE right now. So it's a pretty interesting thing. It's only 1 GCD at the start of a pull. You usually want to grab all the AoE either through a Revenge or Thunderclap, but then Ren Thunderclap again, and it spreads to 5 targets. And every time you Thunderclap after that, it actually refreshes it. And then if you look over on the Prot tree, we have a talent called Blood Surge, which makes the periodic bleed effects have a chance to grant you 5 rage every time it happens. So that kind of works within our rage cycling to give us as much rage as possible. So, you know, it's a pretty interesting thing to have. And right now it is doing our top damage on alpha.
Yeah, it seems really strong for Prot. The only issue I kind of saw with it is I'm really glad you mentioned that you would go into a pack and Thunderclap or Revenge to grab threat initially, because I already know that like people are going to have issues like sub 15 keys, right? Like people are going to have issues with threat because like a warrior is going to want to rend and then Thunderclap, but then like people are going to die, right? So I always thought that was an issue with this before, is that if like you actually open with rend, it was bad, and like lower skilled players would be tricked into doing that. But yeah, that's a nice mention. You guys also got Dauntless Duelist back, which was a Venthyr trait, but they gave it specifically to warrior. Kind of makes sense. It's class fantasy. You know, you're like 1v1ing someone in battle and shit. What else on this tree is like new that you guys think is really cool that all specs have access to? And we're gonna talk about Die by the Sword in a second. Not that.
I think the dwarf racial, right? I don't know if we said that already.
Oh,
at the bottom middle of the tree.
Oh, bitter immunity.
Bottom middle. Yeah,
it's just a free file.
Yeah,
it's like
insane.
a dwarf type. I mean, if you go dwarf, you have that. Like, it's it's pretty strong for a lot of bosses and stuff. And I assume it'll actually work on every boss bleed. Like, I assume they're not going to do what they did in Nathria, where they take it away. Because otherwise that'd be a bit.
I feel like in Nathria
weird.
they wouldn't have taken it away if cross faction was in the game. Like, I feel like it was just a weird thing where they were looking down the barrel of a bunch of guilds like faction transferring, and that would have been like super weird. But now that it's like more easy for anyone to be a dwarf, I feel like they won't shy away from these kind of things helping. I guess Prot Warrior. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was saying one of the most excited things I think a lot of Prot Warriors and a lot of people just in general are Prot Warrior now getting Massacre with Ashen Juggernaut. I'm sure you guys all saw the crazy logs of Jailer, P3, P4 of like Prot Warrior, Necrolord Prot Warrior doing top damage above everybody else. But now that was only starting at 20%. And now the stacks of Ashen Juggernaut go all the way to 30, I believe. Stacking up to 20 times. So that's it. Starting at 35% is just going to be insane, both from a raid perspective and also like a high tyrannical key Mythic plus.
Well, I think it's probably less so in like when you're actually tanking. I just think this is an excellent addition to Warriors raid niche. Like if you look at Prot Warrior specifically, I feel like every tank is kind of brought for a reason other than just staying alive or doing damage usually. Like Warrior previously had Rally, like one of the strongest raid cooldowns. You bring, like, Demon Hunters can do, like, Grip and Sigil. Blood DKs have Mass Grip or Single Grip, almost exclusively why they're brought outside of power level. Paladins have immunities. Previously were the only source of spell warding. Druids, I feel like Druids don't really have one, but, like, it would be cool if they built in, like, do more, like, Heart of the Wild off-spec stuff or out-of-bear form stuff when they're not tanking. But they're giving Warriors, I mean, I would bet anything that Warriors are going to be the tank that does the most damage on a raid boss, sub 35%, than any other tank, and that is an extremely powerful niche. Depending on looking at like what their damage is there right now and seeing that they're kind of doubling down on that is, I think, a really, really cool way to give Warriors a raid spot with high level optimization other than their ability to do damage or reduce damage.
Right. Yeah, they're crazy because they're also adding in a stance changing, right? And that's like also a new thing. And that makes them a very powerful off tank because now not only are you not going to get that damage reduction from always being in defensive stance, you can now, whenever you're not tanking, have that crit damage extra from battle stance so that you can be pumping out damage the entire time whenever you're actually not tanking, which is also not on the GCD.
Oh, the issue is that, sure, well, in for example, in Sepulcher, sure, you could like off tank, right? The Jailer, you didn't tank all the time, but like both Sire and like Sylvanas, like swapping out of defensive stance and like spamming execute. Like especially Sire, for example, you just die, it sounds like super good on paper, and like we see the numbers like gonna do so much damage, but in the reality, I don't see this in farm rate. Sure, like easy content, or when it's on farm, sure, like you can probably do that a bit, but during progress, I don't see this being, I mean, it could be, I could be wrong here, but I don't see it being in a way.
It just depends on the boss.
Yeah, exactly. It really depends on the
like
boss.
we played Prot Warrior on the first tier on Sire, and I think Ben maybe cast 4 executes on the boss. Like you just couldn't press it on that fight at all. Like you would just die. Like.
But there are fights where, and we actually haven't had a fight like this recently where execute was the end all be all, and like that was so important. I guess Jailer in a way is like that because you're like buffed in that phase and you're in the phase twice for like a 35% execute, and you have time when you're not tanking. But think of like Gahoon, think of like Jaina, where like
in Sothic, well, for example, you could probably have
like there's a decent amount of time when you're not tanking and you could just be cranking executes, and like if you're doing like the highest tank single target in an execute phase of a boss like that, again, we haven't seen one in like a year, but that is like you could bring one at the highest level for that reason.
Yeah, I think the important thing is you have the option now, which you just did before.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's the good thing. It's a single pointer. You're going down there anyways, so you just have the option.
I think if the fight allows it, I think the Warrior is gonna be insane for like damage, especially like in progress, like when you're trying to push the last damage you need on like the last boss, whatever. But it is really gonna be fight dependent. It might be amazing. It might be not played at all as well. So we're gonna have to see.
I also feel like you guys have some of the strongest single point nodes that are not an ability in your tree. Like you guys just get a 1-pointer for 5% leech. Like that's actually a big number.
We also have the strongest like 2-point nodes that you can skip like further down the tree, which is like really annoying. So it's like all the point nodes I feel like are way too powerful. At least for Prot, I don't know how it is for like the DPS ones, but like in the bottom of the Prot tree, for example, like there's like 3 different 2-point nodes, and you can't skip a single one. And it's like, yeah, that's great and all, but I'd rather pick some talents that change my gameplay. Yeah, it's on the Prot tree.
It's something, especially here. It's just something that they've clearly used this first line under 20 as like there's a barrier of entry in every tree, because they don't want you to be able to just go down and select everything here. They want you to like commit to going down the line. But I do agree that like getting the 2 points to go down doesn't feel that good ever, especially when it doesn't have like a high power level. You'd like to see it interact with the things under it, if anything. But also, let's talk about the big one. So all 3 specs now have the ability to have Die by the Sword. For arms, nothing changes outside of having some other tools. For Fury, you now have in your tree your same person you have now plus Die by the Sword, and I believe they also innately made them a little more tanky. I read one of the things where it was like passively they might take a little less damage than they do now, but I could be wrong. Either way, strong for Fury, right? Die by the Sword for Prot is a whole ass conversation though. I feel like this is I'm the top of my head in most content. I think this is the singular best tank cooldown in the entire game. It's better than any immunity because of the shorter cooldown. I mean, this is absolutely, and they might even have something better at the bottom of there. We'll talk about this later. But like, how do you guys feel about Die by the Sword for Prot?
It's it's good. I mean, it's an extra wall, right? Like that's the main thing because like obviously you're blocking, right? You're the tank that takes auto attacks, so parrying isn't insane. You can parry a lot of interesting stuff, like Kel'Thalas. You can parry the bleed, which means you could self reset your stacks, and, like force reset because you guarantee the parry. But like parry isn't like insane for Prot Warrior, but I mean it's
in range.
It depends on the boss. Yeah,
it's definitely
like, it
turbo fucking broken in dungeons. Like
in Mythic Plus, it is disgusting, right? Because Prot Warrior, our biggest enemies are magic and bleed, right? And just having 100% parry is like whenever an elusive brawler procs for a brewmaster on, think about like the big Goliaths in Sanguine Depths, right? On high fortified, if you don't have a way to remove it, that's why every Prot Warrior in high keys just went dwarf, because you just die. But now you can just force it by having that 100% parry chance. But not only that, right? That's your free necrotic reset and any necrotic week. So that's just like a fantastic thing. Also, large pulls, basically you can just group it up. 8 seconds, you're basically immune. You're not going to get hit by anything. And it's just, it's just a crazy tool that we have in Mythic Plus.
So with the fear of them potentially nerfing other things because of this, and I want to hear your take on this, I would make the argument that Die by the Sword for both DPS specs is perfectly... I'm glad that Fury has it as well. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do in raids with having DPS tank stuff. I think this might need to have a separate function for Prot. And I think it can be close. It just needs... I think it needs to have a higher cooldown or a reduced parry chance. Because just alone, a 30% DR for 8 seconds on a 2-minute cooldown added to Prot without the parry thing at all is already good. And the parry thing in Mythic Plus scenarios is absolutely insane. And it's super strong, but I wonder if maybe the higher cooldown is the better solution. Or do you guys think it's actually balanced? Prot specifically.
I think it's broken. When you see the talent, it's... What is this? You know, it's... Like, you just... Every 2 minutes, you're just immune for 8 seconds. You know, oh, you're nice, I love it. But it's a little bit, in my opinion, too broken. I would love for it to stay, but I have a very hard time seeing this.
That's the thing, though. Like, you would love for strong things to stay. This is what people don't get. Like, Prot Warrior mains are in the chat, like, no, like, don't nerf us at all, man. But like, the thing is like, when you have abilities, singular abilities that have too high of a power level, and it's not recognized, and it itself is not brought in line, then you can be nerfed in other ways that affect your gameplay. And also, you have to keep in mind that there are 5 other tanks to pick from that all have to be balanced. So like, you can't just like keep most of them the same and increase their power a little bit and then give something this... Like I said, I'm pretty sure in Mythic Plus, a 2-minute Die by the Sword is the singular best tank cooldown in the entire game.
Yeah.
And that's and it's not saying that warriors can't have the best cooldown in the game, but more like they're already gaining other things defensively that we'll talk about later that I think it might be a little too much. And it doesn't need to be like a 10-minute cooldown. Like, it can be like 3 or 4 minutes, but 2 minutes seems like pretty insane for deep.
Yeah, it's so insane that the thing about it is that, it's just too powerful for Prot Warrior to have. But not only does it is it super powerful, it kind of just double down on our already huge strength, right? Which is taking physical damage, right? It doesn't help solve the magic and bleed thing. It does make you like a little bit tankier, like 30% for 8 seconds, but we have shield wall for that, right? And shield wall is being reduced by a ton by both having the wall legendary now baked into our spec and as well as AM. So even though it is like crazy good and we would all love to have it to stay, it is probably just like a little bit too powerful. But like on that note as well, like Fury Warriors are like insanely love this now, right? Because in Mythic Plus, you used to be able to intervene your tank and while Die by the Sword, and you would get rid of their necrotic stacks, because for 6 seconds, you wouldn't be able to get hit while you're intervening your tank, and basically makes them immune for 6 seconds.
And arms can do that, but obviously not Fury, which is like typically a better or good Mythic plus spec. Yeah, that's insane. Yeah. I think you guys kept a lot of your other functions. Just in the class tree alone, you get Spell Reflect, you get all your stuff at the beginning, you get double time pretty easily. Before we like get into building it, what is some stuff you guys see here? We actually probably want to talk about this as a group. I have an idea for something that ARMS has that the other specs don't have, but like, what would you guys like to see different in the class tree other than different pathing and a different idea with the right side of the tree at the bottom? Or are you guys happy with it? Outside of the right side.
Yeah, I feel like there's too many, just like the Paladin one, like where you don't have enough choices. You know, we talked about the Shaman tree. We have like 3, 4, 5 points where you can just, depending on the fight, you can just swap. I feel like it's the same issue for like Prot Warrior, that you just don't have enough options to like swap freely between. You just force into so many points that you maybe have 1 or 2 points. You could definitely like the 2 bottom tiers. You cannot probably swap anything at this point.
Yeah,
which is.
That'll get reimagined with the right side being looked at. I imagine that's kind of what they're alluding to. But
it's like the bottom one is like all these. I wish they wouldn't have. It's the same the general tree. There's 4 nodes that takes 2 out of 2 points. And for Prot, for example, you get 10% stamina and armor 6% armor with your strength, and then the crit and the haste. I guess you could skip, but like having more points to just maybe pick some talents instead is for me a lot more appreciated than having to take 2 points to get 10% stamina in the very bottom of the tree.
So this is something that I kind of want to dive into in regards to raid buffs. Just because this is a YouTube video, I'll probably show the sheet that I showed in a couple of the things as far as like the actual raid value in a raid. Like this has been an insane topic for every single class because a lot of classes are being added to this list. Just focus on this part right here. Oh, I'm not even sharing my screen. Holy shit, that's fine. We didn't actually get into the part where that matters. So like right here, like you're seeing the amount of classes right now that are almost guaranteed a raid spot in Shadowlands for a variety of reasons, although some things could change, right? Look at what Warrior has, right? Like Warrior has a Battle Shout, it has Rallying Cry, albeit a nerfed version of it, right? You're getting this conduit is not as good as the one I believe currently in live, but still a good version. Like Rallying Cry is a Feast or Famine cooldown. It's insane on fights, or it's like pretty irrelevant. It totally depends. But generally a pretty high power level. Plus, they also decided to give Arms Warriors Skull Banner. And I kind of want to talk about this. This was a Mist of Pandaria cooldown. It's a 3-minute cooldown. It increases the crit damage by 20% for party members within 20 yards. It lasts for 10 seconds. I think the cooldown is fine, right? Because like you're not going to be able to line it up with every set of 2 minutes. But there are a lot of classes, not a lot, but a few specs that like permanently crit in their cooldowns that you could line it up with. If you ran like 2 warriors, for example, you could rotate skull banners to where they're up for every 2 minute. How do you guys feel about this being brought back into the game? And then I think a separate conversation after that would be I'll bring up a point on why it should potentially be made available class wide.
I think as it is, it's not as good as people are making it out to be, because 3 minutes for 10 seconds is a long cooldown for a short duration. You're kind of looking at, I think you're kind of looking at like maybe Elemental Shaman just and Fire Mage, obviously, for the people who are going to benefit from that the most, right? So what are you going to do? Throw your warrior into a group full of mages and then potentially not give them Wind Fury Totem because it's arm specific. The thing about Skullbanner specifically is that again for arms, the talent after it, Exploiter, is incredibly good. So you may end up coming down this side anyway to get it. So it might not even matter. I think making this better, I actually think to make this better, you might be better off throwing it into... I think you could potentially reduce the cooldown and then throw it into the prot tree, and then it would prevent people from stacking warriors specifically in order to have multiple of them. At most, you're then going to have 2 if it's in the prot tree, and then you can have it be stronger, but not be completely busted, because it's then impossible to stack.
Yeah, see, that was something I was thinking about with Skull Banner, is a lot of people saw it and they're like, no, more party utility, you're just going to stack all these classes. But in reality, you're already putting an Arms Warrior in a group with a Wind Fury currently, and almost certainly in Dragonflight. And if that's the case, and you're already bringing, you're bringing 1 warrior, and you're probably bringing a shaman, right? So put them in the same group. They already kind of synergize with each other. The only way Skull Banner will really be out of line is if Skull Banner is very, very good for a solid Wind Fury group, because then you're doubling down on 2 things. You're bringing the 2 warriors who benefit off Wind Fury, and then the enhanced, that's 3 people. You add 2 more, you have a Skull Banner every 2 minutes, and then you all have Wind Fury, and then that could just be something where you're like doing the math. I mean, that's how you know, you ended up running a Wind Fury this expansion. Like, they weren't as strong in like the season 1, but in then season 2, season 3, you just started being like, okay, just do the math on what they're adding to other classes, and if you add that to their single target and their damage, not to mention you get like Wind Rush and stuff, okay, they're in the group. The same thing could happen with Skull Banner, where based on classes changing or whatever, you're just like, you know, you can just kind of, I just think it's a potential issue where you get stuck into like, okay, 3 more raid spots taken at all times. You're going to have 2 warriors and 1 shaman in one group for the entire expansion if you're playing optimally, at least, by rotating something like this, where it could be kind of weird. Critcake also just joined. Welcome.
Hello.
Before we go on, do you want to tell the chat about you?
I'm Critcake. Hopefully some of you know me. I play a lot of Arms Warrior. I've been playing Arms for probably 8 years now, whatever. I do a lot of M+. I've always got cutting edge for the last 5 years or so. So, hello.
Sweet. All right, nice. So here's kind of my situation with Skull Banner. So let's just say Skull Banner and having the couple in the group. And I'm not saying this is the case. I actually think you were really accurate, and I'm glad you didn't overreact to say it's just too good. You're always going to play Arms. But in the scenario where it is just kind of like, you know what, it's really just value to bring this all the time. You end up playing Arms the whole expansion. I think Fury potentially has the same issue that that Rogues have currently. So on Rogue's tree, they have Atrophic Poison from a Assassination Rogue, which is basically like Devotion Aura, but it can kind of be a little bit better and worse in some scenarios. But it's something where like having a 3% damage reduction from a boss in a Mythic raid is like insanely powerful, right? So you're going to pretty much always want one of these things. The fact that this is not class-wide means that every outlaw or sub-rogue you bring to your raid will always be the second rogue in, if you're playing optimally, of course. And if you want to count the outlaw CDR, assuming that still works, and you can find 4 other people that really meshes with, assuming it doesn't stack, obviously, then if you're playing sub-rogue, you are only the 3rd rogue in the raid if you're playing sub, again, playing optimally. And a lot of people feed off of that, regardless of whether you need to or not. I think it's a potential issue that if you're going to have Skull Banner in the game, I would just rather it be available at least for both DPS specs, sure, as a prot potential thing as well, but I just feel like you're potentially creating a problem that doesn't exist now and doesn't need to exist by, even if Fury is good, a power level of a party-wide cooldown should be made available to everyone. And they've done this in other trees. Like Shaman, every single Shaman spec has access to Mana Spring, even though Enhanced Shamans will almost certainly never use it currently. But I just want to hear y'all's thoughts on that.
Yeah, it would help. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It would help a lot if Skull Banner was obviously duplicated into the Fury tree as well. I'm not entirely sure what has possessed them to put it only in the Arms tree. I think maybe making it a general warrior talent may be too far. I think at this point you kind of have to make the decision about whether you give it to Prot only or give it to Arms and Fury. Mm-hmm. But if you give it to Arms and Fury, like my point before, yes, it now means, well, if you were to make Skull Banner stronger, because again, like I said, I don't think it's insane in its current form. I don't think it's like an absolute must pick. I think it's a very niche thing, but at the very least, you know, if they were to buff it for whatever reason, then you wouldn't feel compelled to play Arms all the time, and then obviously then maybe Fury's an option. But just in the trees alone, it honestly looks like Arms is kind of the only option at the moment anyway, but we can get onto that later. But yeah, I still think that just making it Prot only would be a better option, simply because it just gets rid of the whole potential stacking warriors and putting one in every group, just because it turns out that it's actually broken on a particular fight.
I mean, that's the thing, because like imagine like the rich get richer thing. Like Prot Warrior is not every class in the game is built the same when it comes to being brought to a raid based on anything other than their tuning. Like tuning is always up and down. Only a few classes in the game are consistently always tuned well. Other than that, it's like an RNG lottery for everyone else. Warriors are one of the classes where they will always have a very strong application to getting into raids. Rallying Cry is insane. Just it's a stackable as hell cooldown. There's so many raid fights where they have massive damage events every 1 minute or 2 minutes, and then you just bring as many warriors to always have rally for it. And it's that simple. And so many classes don't have that. So you'd be giving a already stackable class another reason to stack when other classes don't have it. So I think it's definitely something to look at. But we'll talk about that more when we get into the class tree. I think we might be about time to start moving down, or I meant the spec tree earlier, before moving down the class tree. If you guys have any last second takes before we go through, keep in mind when we pass some of these talents and you guys are having me path through them, we will kind of talk about the decision-making process that goes into that. But yeah, any last thoughts on this tree before we move on? And we will be doing Prot first. All right, so I'm going to have actually Pika do this. Don't spend too much time on each individual ability. Just kind of help route it. Look at my screen that I'm sharing right now. And you're just going to have me select things and go down, and then we'll kind of keep going, go all the way down the tree before we go back up. Even if you spend 13 points in the beginning for some reason, just make sure that we move down at 8 or 9 or whatever is like totally required. And then we'll come back up and talk about the choices we have later after we get the required throughput stuff at the bottom. All right, and I would take this from a rating perspective first, and then if there are any changes to be made for it going into Mythic Plus, you can make those changes afterwards.
Okay. Do you want to start with actually the Mythic Plus perspective first, since I already have that laid out on my screen right now?
That's just fine.
Go.
Yep.
All right. So from Mythic Plus perspective, obviously you start with defensive stance. That's what we are, Prot Warrior. And then move down to second row, which is we're going to take Rallying Cry and Berserker Rage.
Okay.
Next one, the next line, we're going to take Double Time, Spell Reflect, and Heroic Leap. Then after that will be Honed Reflexes. Like everything in this line is just good, right? So like Stormbolt, Intimidating Shout, Impending Victory, or Piercing Howl, whichever one's based out situation. But let's generally Impending Victory, and then Furious Blows.
Okay, so you do spend 10 points here. Do you think any of these currently are required to continue pathing down the tree, or is a potential thought later, or do you think you will always 100% take all of these talents?
In general, I think you want to take all these talents. The one thing that you maybe wouldn't take is the Furious Blows on the right, because I don't think the right tree right now, like we always talk about, is not super strong. But the reason why we want to do that, at least from the Mythic Plus perspective, is we want to go into Seismic Reverberation, right? Cool. Because of the amount of damage it brings. But yeah, right now, like that's mainly what we want to do for this part of the tree.
Sure. Yeah. All right. Take me down.
All right, the next line, we want to go Massacre, because the amount of damage Execute's doing right now on the PTR, or not PTR, the Alpha. Rend, followed by Thunderclap. We're going to skip Kokonis, Fotis Roar. And we're going to get War Machine here, just because we need enough points to go down. We're going to skip the Shattering Throw and Bounding Stride, and then finally get Seismic Reverberation.
Sure. And then one question I do have, I want to see what else you're choosing from at the end, but I find it very interesting that you would select Massacre in a lot of Mythic Plus dungeons. But I'll kind of, I guess, maybe like bosses where you'd be using it aren't doing as much to tanks in general. Like usually trash is like the difference and not the boss, but definitely be interesting to see that. We'll see how much you have. All right, what do you have in the next row? I'm assuming Blood and Thunder.
Yeah, Blood and Thunder, Armor to the Teeth. Right now, I don't know if you've seen on Alpha, but the amount of armor value Protection Warriors are getting is insane. So that actually gives us entirely a giant amount of strength to our damage.
All right, cool.
Yeah, Crushing Force over there, and then we're going to skip Overwhelming Rage, no more on the right side.
Okay, sweet. And then we're going down to Die by the Sword, obviously, and then grabbing...
Yeah, Die by the Sword.
I'm assuming the Leech, right?
Yeah, the Leech. Leech is insane. Every tank in all their trees are looking at this, and they're so jealous because we get like 10%, possibly 15% baseline, right? And already like it does a ton of our healing for Prot Warrior in Mythic Plus.
Yep. All right. What are you doing in the capstone level?
In the capstone levels, we're gonna focus on the left side and the middle. So we're gonna get Cruel Strikes, 2 points into that. 2 points into the Reinforced Plates, and then 2 points into Enduring Training so we can go down.
See, this is I already the fact that you're spending like 6 points right here is I guess you get to pick 2 of the capstone things. That's fine. All right, so you're grabbing Avatar, I assume.
Yes, Avatar, and then Unstoppable Force to bring us back into that BFA era.
Yep.
We're gonna go with the Spear Bastion with Elysian Might, and then just Shockwave because generally you need the stops in Mythic Plus.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about decisions you could make based on the actual dungeon. So you could go like Piercing Howl, I guess, if you needed a slow. You might not necessarily need Impending Victory. You'll probably always take Stormbolt. The Execute talent, the question is like, what would you even be trading the Execute talent for? Was like the question I was asking you earlier. You would never go for the Rallying Conduit in dungeons. Maybe like Shattering Throw based on a very specific interaction. So this looks like pretty cut in stone. Looks like there's like almost no choice here whatsoever.
I actually have like something I'm surprised you went down this with. I would never pick Berserker Rage baseline, for example. And I'm not picking Impending Victory baseline either. But I would definitely want the 5% Legion and plus. Like 5% extra Legion and plus and you would take the Berserker stance instead. Because then you have the option where bosses don't matter or do a lot of damage to you. you can leave defensive stance and still get that even more like offensive with all attacks doing more damage.
And
'Cause
I think it just to be really dependent on the dungeons, right? Like, so if you need Berserker Stance at all, then, I mean, sorry, the Berserker Rage at all, then you would take it, right? Because it always breaks the fears, it always breaks, like, first boss and miss, right? You're always going to take Berserker Rage. But if you don't need it, then you don't have to take Impending Victory. But Impending Victory is just kind of that oh crap button that Prot Warrior doesn't really have right now. But having that not compete with Indomitable for once, it gives us that, we took a big hit, we were able to heal ourselves rather than have to rely on the healer. But I can see merit towards playing Berserker Stance and Siphoning Strikes, but you're never actually ever going to be in Berserker Stance. You're basically using 2 points to gain 5% leech.
Correct, and then you're basically swapping that extra point for the leech. You're gaining 5% leech, but you're losing exactly Berserker Rage and Impending Victory. I guess you could also technically lose like Shield Slam damage and Whirlwind, but like that seems like something that you'd probably take. One thing I noticed is you're almost never going to take Bounding Stride now, but I mean, you wouldn't like really take that. That's like I think Bounding Stride is going to be like a very raid specific thing where like you need to leap exactly on a certain timer kind of thing, and the reduced cooldown is like just too good.
Yeah, it's very much like a quality of life kind of thing. People just love to use it because it's great for the speed, but in practicality, you don't need it most of the time unless you're thinking something specifically, like you said, in a raid mechanic that you need to do. Another thing that could be based off the fight or the dungeon is Intervene, right? Because Intervene can do some crazy things. Like if you look right now in Spires of Ascension, you can eat the bleed on the third boss, right? And that like makes it a really good talent specific to a certain dungeon, but you would need to play around your talents specifically for different dungeons.
Okay. Scott, what do you think you would do Scott or Naowh? Like, what do you guys think is the main thing you guys are changing on like the average raid boss for Prot?
You wouldn't go the talent on the right size make reverberation, because that wouldn't, like on most bosses, that wouldn't do anything. So you'd probably look for Bounding Stride at that point. Because you kind of want to go down there anyways for the shield slam damage.
You're probably still playing Blood and Thunder.
Yeah, you're still playing that, yeah. Ren's still like insanely strong and getting the reset on. You played the Venthyr one, what is it called? Yeah, Duelist one. Yeah, you'd definitely play that. Instead of the Leech, because like on a raid boss, you're definitely not going to leech as much as 3% damage deals, and then also the 1.5% DR. But you'd basically stick with this. I mean, I think on the right, like Thunderous Roar and the other one, like they're work in progress, so I wouldn't count them out yet. Because like the node over there is haste, and obviously you'd prefer the haste over the crit in most raid encounters. So like as long as that actually is tuned well, I mean right now it's got the tooltip for Dragon Roar, right, which isn't going to be very good, but if they actually tune that correctly, then it can be good. Okay. So I wouldn't count that side out yet. And then obviously depends if the boss has a bleed or not, because like a bleed or anything you could remove from bitter immunity, because you probably wouldn't take that if there isn't a reason to. That's the point at the middle bottom.
So I heard a lot of people were like really happy with the warrior tree in general, but just looking at it from a prop perspective, I think one thing they did really well in this tree is they've pathed well. Like the pathing both to the right and the left and then back into the middle based on what you choose in the end is very nice. And I think you guys like it because you're gaining a lot of power. Like you guys are gaining things, especially the DPS specs are gaining things they haven't had before, and Prot gets died by the sword, and then a potential for bitter immunity. But it doesn't seem like there's really that much choice at all, actually. Like most other classes are choosing between like, okay, I got all my points set up. All right, now I got 6 points to pick exactly what I need. But I guess maybe what's to be said about the warrior tree is you don't really have to try to choose what you need. You kind of just get it all, right? Like warriors, for example, have a lot less individual buttons to choose than like all the totems that shaman have, for example. So like you're basically just choosing between like intervene. At any point you're choosing between intervene, berserker rage, impending victory, and like that's it. You could like get rid of execute damage to like gain one of those things. Like what are you actually removing here in a raid to get berserker rage? What are you removing to get intervene? As a problem.
Oh, you remove Berserker Race in the Leech in the raid for sure. You don't need the top two.
Yeah, you would go attack stuns.
Okay, yeah, you get. Okay, so then now to path to heroic leap and then down to bounding, which again, bounding
you don't
is
need
definitely
bounding, but there's a lot of times like Zymox and stuff where like Prot Warrior like seems mobile, but it actually isn't, because like all your mobility is towards the boss rather than away. So, but you would want battle stance in raid probably. Like it depends how they tune battle stance versus the berserker stance, but like you probably want one just because it's off GCD right now.
In raid, you'd also want inspiring presence most of the time, right? Because the power of rally and cry, they're usually for very dangerous situations. So
Yeah,
you
it depends. It
It
depends.
definitely
really
depends.
depends.
It definitely depends. Like I could see inspiring presence not being taken in a lot of scenarios because like baseline rally covers it. It would have to be like a very specific thing where like you're almost dying with rally and you're like, okay, we need like a little bit
Lords
more.
of
from it.
Dread. Lords of Dread, you would take it, but on like Guardian, you wouldn't if like the duration actually didn't extend it for another one of Guardians.
And then I think
Yeah.
another easy thing in raid 2 is you'd 100% get rid of intimidating shout in place of impending victory to go down. And then at this point, you don't have intimidating shout. You have impending victory. You're chilling, and you have to spend one more total point with battle stance and everything to even unlock the capstone nodes. And that's like kind of your choice. It's like intimidating shout, better rally, berserker shout, intervene or second wind, or bounding stride. And you only have one choice though. I guess you have two if you want to take out execute damage. But again, I really like we're thinking high level play. I think most people who play Prot Warriors and raids will not take execute damage the entire expansion, and they're just gonna tank because like a lot of lower like ranked kills. They have enough eye level to where it's no longer a DPS check, and the tank's job is less doing damage and not dying, and more just like don't die at all costs. So like
Yeah,
maybe
it's like a
having
min-maxy thing.
yeah. So I can definitely see that. You could also maybe not have Stormbolt, but you do need something to path down through Thunderclap and stuff.
Oh, you would
so-
take the Titanic throw instead, I guess, on Stormbolt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But something interesting to note is the change in spell reflect, right? So now it gives you that magic DR even after it reflects the first spell cast, and that's pretty massive for Prot Warrior.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this is definitely huge. And there's a even more insane thing in the class tree, which we'll get into later. All right, so this makes sense. Do you guys have any more notes on Prot? We'll spend much more time on your all's spec tree and just talk about, and then that's where we'll answer the question of what the class looks like as a whole. Like one thing we'll ask at the end of this before I'm done talking with you is, here's what Prot Warrior is now. What does it look like Prot Warrior is going to be in the expansion, right? And then that's when we actually, after we've seen the whole picture. So we'll get into that later. Are you guys good with the tree as it is now for class?
Yeah, I'm not really sure why there's like the two-handed specialist in the class tree. Like, like that doesn't really make sense to me. Like,
This is a big conversation that I'm not having for Prot because it'll be a much more important conversation for
yeah, it's
for
just
Prot
like
Warrior-
it just
or for
doesn't do
Arms.
anything for Prot, right? Which is why I don't really get why. Like, you could take that as a Prot Warrior, and I just don't know why that's a thing, right? Like, it's just weird.
Giving gavel to Prot Warrior. That's why.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool. So that's it for Prot. Let's talk about the for Critcake and Dan. Let's talk about arms real quick, and then we'll just quick shift it to Fury. This can be a general build for all content. You can talk about how it would be different for Raid and Mythic Plus. Just fine. So we'll have Dan do this for. Actually, we'll do Fury real quick for Dan, and then I'll actually have Critcake can change it up for arms, and then we'll do the same thing for your all's spec trees.
Yeah, sure. Let me just get to here. All right. First things first, you're probably going to end up going battle stance anyway, because it is just significantly better than berserker stance. Rallying cry is a no-brainer. Double time to the bottom left of it. Honed reflexes to the bottom left of that. Berserker, siphoning strikes probably instead of berserker rage, in most cases, followed by heroic leap and furious blows.
Yep.
After that, you're kind of left with the 1 point to effectively place wherever you want. You will eventually want to come down sort of the right side of the middle section in order to get to Dauntless Duelist, but you already get there from Heroic Leap. So this is basically situational, like improved rally, spell reflect, defensive stance if you really need it, but Fury's going to be tanky as hell anyway. Impending victory, but same thing. So pretty general. I guess spell reflect would probably be the most taken choice, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we'll
Well,
just
looks
say
like we
it's spell
kind of,
reflect
if you
for
want to
now.
just maximize the amount of points for now, going like impending victory in most content and then piercing howl for something like Rygalon or some shit is
Yeah.
fine. And then you'll take that down to Dauntless Duelist. I just want to point out that you at least do have that like 1 point of choice, but I think it's super weird that the free point you guys are getting are in a stance that you won't use. That is absolutely something we probably should have talked about earlier, so it was like more on the forefront. But Berserker stance needs to be made better, and it's fine if it's auto attack damage because it looks like Fury wants to have a little bit more of an auto attack emphasis potentially. Who knows if it'll be good? It looks like it's like single-minded Fury stuff anyway, so who knows? But the fact that they're giving you a point for free that you won't use, I think, is the singular only spec in the entire game that the free point they get at the top of their class tree is something that they will not interact with at all. So that definitely should be buffed or changed in some way to where you would use it.
Yeah, there is a way in the Fury tree specifically that it could be made slightly better, but whether it ends up competing with Battle Stance or not is a completely different matter. But yeah, we can get onto that later as well.
Yeah.
But going on into the next tiers, you're looking at War Machine. Crushing Force is really annoying because it doesn't interact with Fury at all, but you need it in order to get to Dauntless Duelist, so it's a completely wasted talent. Even War Machine is basically useless because Fury's rage gain is not really from autos, it's from abilities that you use. So both of those talents feel pretty bad to take, but they are needed in order to get to what is effectively 3% verse. So that's a horrible choice, but you kind of have to make it.
Yeah, that I didn't even realize that when I looked at that. That's awful, right? I mean, you having all these nodes be throughput in the middle here and have Fury have to take 2 dead points just to get one thing is something where they absolutely should fix the pathing, or they should make Crushing Force and War Machine have some kind of additional benefit for Fury.
I suppose like the War Machine at least is going to have some benefit. It's just that tooltip at the moment will not stay at 50% rage because that is the Prot version on live. It's also like that for arms, which means that every auto attack is almost 40 rage that you get per swing, which leads to almost perma rage capping, which is not balanced in the slightest. Like I say, Fury won't really feel it, but you know, I don't see what you could do to War Machine in order to make it better for Fury on a pure single target standpoint. Crushing Force is kind of simple. There's a lot of Bloodthirst damage increases already, but there's very few Raging Blow. So you just throw Raging Blow damage in there as well, and then you suddenly cover all 3 specs. And it's like not a dead talent anymore.
Yeah, that's an excellent suggestion. Cool. What else are you doing on this tree?
On top of that, we're looking at Massacre for sure, and Armored to the Teeth, and Die by the Sword. I do honestly think you want to come down the right side of the tree anyway, because you want to get to dual wield specs, so you go Bounding Stride, Overwhelming Rage, and Frothing Berserker.
And now you still even have 3 points before you even unlock the capstone node. Are these choice nodes near the top?
Yeah, it's all choice stuff from now. Like, you could take Rend for throughput, I suppose, but realistically, you'd be looking at Rend for an AoE situation to also take with Blood and Thunder, even for Fury, because at the moment the Whirlwind Cleave doesn't spread Rend. So on single target, it's still really good damage for the rage cost, but I'm not sure if it would outweigh like the choices of a Spell Reflect for safety, which is an incredibly strong defensive tool, or Inspiring Presence in good situations. The movement speed is kind of pointless because Fury has that baked into Enrage anyway, or at least improved Enrage. And then defensive stance is obviously really good as well. You could argue for defensive stance and intervene just to pull off the Die by the Sword shenanigans, because now you can get it for free. And then if you wanted to, that then would then leave 1 more point to either go, Spell Reflect, Inspiring Presence, or even the alternative to Rend is Pain and Gain, which is that Conduit, the Condensed Animosphere, which is just the healing on taking damage, which is good. It is strong. It's only a 10-second cooldown, so it's pretty decent healing across an entire fight. So even that. Yeah, I mean,
even in a fight where you're never intervening, you could take Pain and Gain and Second Wind, and you're just healing. That's, I mean, self-healing, especially that you don't have to interact with or use or waste any throughput on, is definitely very powerful. In fact, I think when was it? You guys would know this, Critcake, and you would know this. When was Second Wind totally fucking insane?
Sludge Fist.
No, not even in this expansion. I'm talking ancient history. It was so broken.
Do you mean Mist when it was below 35%
It was Mist. Yes,
that was it.
Yes,
yeah.
that was it.
Yeah.
Dude, that was you looked at healing meters and you were just like, what? That was Warlock tier almost insane.
Yeah.
Warlock and Antorus. All right. So what are you looking at the bottom of the tree? I think I know where you're going, but we'll see.
Yeah. Quick thinking into dual wield specialization, and then you're kind of looking 2 into reinforced plates, 2 into cruel strikes, and then from here it gets a little bit more difficult. I think just because of Fury playing better into 45-second, 1.5-minute cooldowns, Avatar and Signet makes more sense than the 1-minute cooldown of Spear of Bastion and then having Elysian Might behind it. So you could go Avatar and Signet, but Spear's not strong enough to take on its own. So it would kind of then leave one final point to, again, put wherever you would want.
Okay. Let's talk about Signet now, since you just talked about potentially taking Avatar and not taking Signet. Is the biggest, as far as I'm aware, is the biggest issue with Signet the fact that it is random, or the fact that you can roll an ability that loses control of your character?
It's kind of both. It's the biggest issue with it for a lot of people is the fact that on single target it can give you a Blade Storm, which you would never want anyway. It's so rare that you would ever want it. Like, there's some situations in Mythic Plus where, to avoid some CC, and you just have Recklessness anyway, you'll press it, hope for the Blade Storm, and then hope that immunes the CC. But even if it doesn't, you're not particularly unhappy. But outside of that, every other time, it's terrible to just randomly Blade Storm and then have to cancel it.
Dude, you know what? You sounding like rationalizing like the few times you would want Blade Storm. You know that sounds like trying to make someone making the argument that IQD isn't dog shit. Right? Like someone's saying that like, oh, well, you know, like sometimes you can like heal someone or give mana to someone, but in reality, every single time someone doesn't get stats from their IQD, they're mad as fuck. And that's basically what Blade Storm is for Signet outside of an extremely niche situation.
Signet the other way around with Blade Storm proccing the other 2 abilities is fine because it's controlled. You know you're going to be Blade Storming. It's not a shock, and then you get a nice buff out of it afterwards. But the other way around is horrible. But the way to fix it is so easy. You just remove Blade Storm from it entirely and replace it with Ravager. Ravager's the bottom right of the Fury tree, just second from the bottom. Yeah, you just replace it with that. And you, again, down to tuning, you would make sure that the numbers of Ravager don't make it a liability on AoE like it is currently. But then you can't be mad when it gets dropped, because you get Rage over time, which both DPS specs would like anyway, and it's not interrupting anything. You know, you can still have the portion of Signet that would proc from Blade Storm so that Arms doesn't get screwed over, because Arms doesn't have Ravager. But, yeah, it just seems like such a simple fix.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I think we have an idea. We talked about like Raider Mythic Plus. I love the way you went down this tree. That's excellent. And you get, I mean, you're also just, I mean, dude, the fact that like Fury is like innately tanky and also has enraged regen and die by the sword, I think Fury is stepping into the territory of there are the unkillable specs in this game, right? Like Fire, which just gained greater invis, by the way. Any class with a cheat death, even though a lot of them are going to be losing them with Night Fae if you're a Dreamweaver gamer, where there's like this middle tier of defensiveness, and then there's this high tier of like, okay, this class is actually unkillable. You could have this class solo things that normally you couldn't solo. I think Fury Warrior is moving from an above average defensive class to one of the very, very best in the game. And I think that's something that should be mentioned as well.
Dying as a Fury Warrior in Dragonflight means you are bad, 100%. You have so many tools to avoid it. Like, I don't see how it could ever happen.
Yep, and now it's just got better. So, yeah, it's very insane. Very similar to like Ellie Shaman's Ascendance as far as not their ability, but they're ascending into the top tier of defensiveness even after the nerfs recently. Let's switch this up for Arms, Critcake. So how would you? Let me actually just go slam over to the Arms tree. So Arms, other than Fury, already starts out on the right foot by just instantly not having a dead point at the start of their tree. So where would you take this?
Exactly. I take Death Stance first.
Death Stance, okay. Oh, you got Alpha yesterday, by the way. You did end up getting it?
I did, yes. I did.
Excellent, okay.
I tested a little bit, but I've not had much time. But next would be Rallying Cry and Berserker Rage, I think. Yeah. And then Double Time, Inspiring Presence, Spell Affection, Heroic Leap.
Okay, so you think you're going to take default Inspiring Presence in all content?
Yeah, well, not for all content, but I'm thinking in a sort of a raid setting.
Okay, sure.
Honed Reflexes, take Massacre and Rend.
Okay, Massacre and Rend.
Yeah. Can keep moving down. Armor to the Teeth.
Die by the sword.
Yep. By the way, Die by the Sword will be Arms' only defensive, we don't have a passive defensive or an inbuilt defensive.
Yeah,
other than
technically
defensive
Death
stance.
Stance or Spell Reflect, obviously,
Yeah.
but yeah, like you where Fury is ascending in the defensiveness category, Arms is kind of staying in the definitely average defensiveness. Arms was also just kind of a squishy class this expansion, unless you were just abusing defensive stance. But if you're like playing optimally to kill a like end tier boss, I felt like Arms was like significantly more in danger than Fury.
Yeah,
Sure,
exactly.
it was a damn sight better than it was in throughout all of BFA though. Like getting Spell
True,
Reflect back
true.
alone and having defensive stance as a possibility were both
For sure.
massive.
I
And
think,
Ignore Pain, which all specs are losing apart from Prot, which is really bad. Like especially for Arms, that's so bad. I get that the trade-off sucked for a lot of people, but man, Ignore Pain for Arms was an absolute lifesaver in a
Yeah.
lot of situations.
I gotta miss Ignore Pain because we don't have access to it in
Yeah.
Dragonflight.
Where do you head after this? You have to path down one of these, right?
Yeah, so just take Piercing Howl or Impending, probably Impending.
Okay.
And what's that thing on the right?
War
called? Furious
Machine,
Blows?
Crushing Fist, Furious
Definitely.
Blows.
Definitely. Heroic Leap, Bounding Stride, yeah. Overwhelming Rage, Frothing Berserker,
And
then
Dauntless.
Dauntless there, yeah.
Dude, this is interesting. Every
You-
other
you-
spec of Warrior kind of freely is pathing through Bounding Stride, and then Prot Warrior seems way more restrictive than the other two. That's actually really interesting.
I'm sitting here watching you guys. I'm so jealous. I'm like, these guys have so many points, dude. But like, what are my points? That's crazy.
It's mad though,
Yeah.
because Frothing Berserker for Arms suddenly gains insane value. That's
Yeah.
like every single ability is spending rage. So Frothing Berserker becomes insane. Like rage issue, part of the rage issues, ignoring War Machine, which is just broken. Like Frothing Berserker almost solely eliminates rage issues for Arms.
Definitely.
It's
it feels so good
huge.
to play on the alpha right now.
Oh,
with
yeah.
regards to Rage, even without War Machine, because War Machine most definitely will be there for Arms because it's 50% on this tree, but it's 10% on live.
How does your rage bar feel playing on alpha compared to live currently without Wind Fury?
It's infinite.
Really?
You're almost overcapping
Yeah.
permanently.
So do you think that wow. Okay. So do you think that Arms Warrior would receive less benefit from Wind Fury going forward because it would just be kind of redundant?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
A
They
lot
will
of it then
probably
depends on what they're going to do with War Machine. But
Yeah,
also in
exactly.
the Arms tree, there's other things, or there's other talent in the Arms tree which is particularly strong at helping us, like sort of hold on to our rage. It's Battle Lord in the bottom left, just above the capstone. It's really good because the chance of it is really high, but I think it's a little bit too strong potentially. But yeah, rage issues are basically gone. So while Wind Fury might be nice, I don't think it's necessary. I've even been doing testing just not taking War Machine at all, which you would never do because it's, on the way to Crushing Force and Dauntless Duelist,
Yeah, it's
so
just
you're
too
going to take
much.
it no matter
Yeah.
what. But even without it, even without any additional rage on autos, you're still almost perma overcapping rage. It's
Really?
insane
Exactly.
right
Wow.
now.
It's insane.
That's so different. I feel like that's gonna be so insane in Execute too.
Oh god, yeah.
Yeah, that's we'll talk about that later because that's the DPS Warriors all-time niche. They were the OG Execute class. They've been slowly giving it to a ton of other specs, but like Warriors are like the OG. Shout out to the what's that clip called on Argus?
It's just called Execute.
Yeah,
The
Execute.
Dragon Ball Z one?
Yeah, the massacre stacking up to the clouds. Yeah. Okay, so what do you do in the capstone node here?
I'm sure you know where we're going from here. So Cruel Strikes, two-handed
Two-handed web
spec,
spec.
yeah,
Kyrian,
Spear, and then Elysian
Avatar.
Might. That, and that. Yep.
And
is that it?
then and then you'd take like bitter immunity, and I think you're gonna. Hopefully, you guys have enough points to take bitter immunity pretty frequently. This is very nice to have. So I especially Arms. I hope. Okay, this is. I hate this. I hate that you could just like copy paste, like just do a print screen and just copy this, and this is just like what you're running in.
Yeah.
In like the whole expansion, but again, I don't think we spend a ton of time on it because they've already clearly acknowledged that like the right side of this class tree is pretty fucked. So hopefully they're bottom right. Hopefully they address that there, so we don't have to spend a ton of time on it. But you are also like a little. I will say Arms has more than Prot, but like if you're talking about the actual choices you have at the top of this tree, you spent 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I think points up here. you know, you could get rid of Inspiring Presence again, very fight specific, and you could put that. You could grab Stormbolt for a fight. You could grab Intim Shout. You could, you know, grab Intervene. I think in a lot of raid scenarios, Intervene has pretty good value. I think because you saw a mixture of Arms and Fury, I think it was pretty normal actually to not have a ton of like die by the sword tech. Like you saw some die by the sword tech at the end of like, you know, like Lords of Dread and some other bosses when they're, you know, anytime a boss is about to enrage in progression, it's the first thing you think of is like, do you have die by the sword, right? But like it is Intervene, die by the sword at any point is an incredibly strong tank cooldown. And that's something I think you might consider way more now for Fury, because Fury is alive without this button, where Arms is probably not. So you could actually, as a Fury warrior, potentially could just be some really sick raid utility for tanks or some other function, like people being fixated by ads and stuff and letting them stand still. So that's something that I think is really cool. I actually think this Rallying Cry conduit, I know this sounds kind of dumb, but I think this is one of the worst points on this tree. And it was such a really good conduit in this expansion that you're kind of and Rallying Cry is such a good ability that you're conditioned to think that like this is good. But I think this version of the conduit is actually like not good. I think it's like extremely rare that you're going to use this. It's going to be
because
like
he lost the duration, right? Because it used to make overlap multiple like different spell queues, but losing that duration means that it's kind of the same either way. It's going to have that health buff and not be able to overlap more spells than it used to by adding it.
I think the duration is still there, isn't it? It's
the
just
duration
lower.
The duration is still there. It's just a much lower level conduit than you're currently
Yeah.
using it. I think this is actually like a season 1 conduit, right?
Probably.
Season 2 maybe, I don't remember, but it's like now the number is
Season
like in the
2, I
40%, right? That's what it is right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's dumb how far it's gotten.
Yeah, so like I mean, it's just not something that's required. Like again, Lords of Dread, the duration matters so much because you can, you know, have it for so much longer of the thing and not have it fall off during it or use it later, whatever. But yeah, and then yeah, definitely Berserker Shout seems very closed off. Like you're like I can't see where any one of your all specs is taking Berserker Shout the whole expansion currently.
It's niche.
I mean, it would be like a
Utility,
fight
right?
like Mist in M plus, for example. You would probably take it.
If you
But
don't
it's
have a
very,
Turbo
very-
Totem, yeah.
Yeah, very very niche.
Even there, would it be worth taking that for the one boss compared to, let's say, like Stormbolt, which would be
Correct.
far better served
Yep.
across the rest
Yep.
of the dungeon?
Yep.
It's
Yeah,
It's
it's
so
yeah, but like
mad how that can
Paladins,
be
like
so
Paladins
niche.
took that conduit, right? The Fear conduit, like in season 1 or 2 or whatever with Mist. Like they took to a whole conduit for the entire dungeon for that reason, right? Because first boss is the wall for high Mist keys.
Oh, and then and people
yeah,
are
I
mentioning
would-
huge PvP diff. Apparently in PvP you're taking this every time. Obviously we never bring up PvP in here at all, but also they're obviously creating these trees to be working in PvP and PvE. And usually, actually, interestingly enough, I've found it really cool in these trees that there's not a lot of things you can point to and be like, you will never take this, it's only for PvP. They've actually done a good job at making both things be relevant in all content. But this is one specifically where I feel like it's like turbo niche. But the thing is you guys don't have like a ton of niche spots though. Like Prot for sure is more strapped, but you guys definitely run into the issue where as soon as you start getting down here, you're locked in. Like you are not thinking about anything up there. Like you've got your utility, whatever you're done. You're not doing anything else. So yeah, definitely interesting to think about. Quick question, because I actually wanted both of you to talk about this. I forgot to do AoE for Dan, but how do you guys feel about will you guys be utilizing as an arms warrior? What do you change here, or do you change to do a like Mythic Plus dungeon, for example, crit? Because this was based on like, raid.
I think you would just drop the what's it called, Crushing Force and Dauntless Duelist,
Okay. And then you would just
and Blood and Thunder and what? Yeah, Thunderclap and Blood and Thunder.
that's the only change, and then you're chilling.
I believe so. Oh, you can change to Seismic on the right side instead of Bounding Stride.
Oh, I see. Oh, over here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That is definitely is that by the way, will you be utilizing any Rend or Thunderclap Blood and Thunder stuff for Fury, Dan?
not. I mean, you theoretically could. The rage is there to be able to do it, and all of a sudden, Rampage as your main spender is no longer as important. A lot of people have been starting to mess around with just not taking Rampage at all, but yeah, I don't think that'll ever be a thing. You could just to, I mean, even if it's just something as simple as like having Rend, Blood, and Thunder, and then using Thunderclap to refresh Rend rather than the Rend itself, and saving yourself 5 rage. Like, there's possibility for that to happen, because, I mean, you saw that when you've got everything that you absolutely need across the first 2 like sets of tiers, you effectively have 2 points left over, but you could potentially have 5, because you don't necessarily need to go War Machine, Crushing Force, Dauntless Duelist, especially in M+.
Yeah.
So you've got 5 points left over, you can take that, and I don't think it's going to be insane.
It sounds
I think
good
much rather...
on dungeons where you're pulling 8 or more mobs frequently. That,
yeah,
or something like just, I mean, what is Thunderclap? It's not target capped, right? It's 5 nearby, so it's the single target you have it on, so it'll be on 6 total enemies. I just would love to see how that performs on a. Oh wait, what's the cooldown of Thunderclap for Fury? So I mean, like, you actually could spread it to more than that. Like, if you're doing a large thing, your second Thunderclap will be. I assume it won't refresh, and it will put it on 5 new targets.
Yeah, I don't know whether it is going to exponentially spread or not, because I know it specifies that when you Thunderclap a target affected by Rend, but I was testing it a little bit earlier, and it's clearly not your target. It's just something with Rend, because you can target nothing and it will spread. So, like, unless there is just a hard cap to it, you could potentially. I don't see anything alluding to a full cap. But it sounds like you could. Yeah, I'm sure you could potentially just exponentially and infinitely spread your Rend if you just keep.
The one thing I was testing with Thunderclap, I don't know if it was a bug or not, but if I tried to pass on the Rend from something that like it spread to, not the original Rend target, it wasn't spreading.
Interesting.
Right, so it will only go from from targets that you've actively put Rend on. I wonder if it would do it again to another target that you actively apply Rend to. Meaning that if you put up 2 Rends on your own and then press Thunderclap, would it spread up to 10 times?
That could be tested very quickly, but that sounds something that would be potentially really good. Anyway, so that's something to consider. Yeah. Okay, so any other notes about the class tree? I'm going to give a few, and then you guys can kind of piggyback off of it. And then whenever we feel like we're good with this, probably a very short amount of time, we're actually going to move into the Prot Spec tree, which is extremely fucking good. If spoiler for anyone who's watching this, but I just want to kind of hear some overall opinions on the Warrior tree. I'm a little conflicted with it. So I'm going to give it time because clearly it's going to be iterated on. The bottom right is going to be changed, which means that the bottom left in tune might be changed. For example, they might put some of this over, they might put Avatar on the right or something, right? Like, who knows? They might swap all of this around. So kind of forgetting the bottom. I think it's weird. You guys don't have a lot of choice, but you also are getting a lot of powerful shit. So, like, usually classes are like, man, I wish I had more choice. And also, I feel like I'm just picking the stuff I already have. And then there are classes that are like, oh, well, you know, I have choice, but we're not really gaining that much power. You guys are actually powerful. I feel like you're gaining power. Maybe Fury and Prot more than Arms. But at least defensively. But you're, you know, I mean, you're gaining Avatar. I don't know. It seems really strong. It's just like you're always just going to pick the same thing. And I don't really know how they fix that. Maybe there's some extra baseline stuff. What do you guys think?
Potentially. I mean, everything for me just falls into that bottom right-hand side of the tree. Also, not to mention the two-handed weapon spec and dual wield spec don't belong in this general class talent tree. They just don't. And they should be moved two-handed weapon spec into the arms tree somewhere and dual wield into the Fury one. Because there is absolutely no situation where one spec or the other and even Prot even looks at either of them. So why are they here? It's just 2 points that are effectively entirely wasted. And it's bad for Fury, because you have to come down the right-hand side of the tree, go further into the right-hand side of the tree, like I was saying before, 4 points into, 2 points into 4% of haste, 2 points into dual-wield spec, and now you're 4 points down and can't get everything that you want on the left. Like, you can't get Avatar and Signet, and Spear of Bastion and Elysian Might, suddenly. And it's just, it feels bad to have to make that choice just because I'm a dual wielder. And that's what the spec does.
I think you're entirely right, and I think Blizzard needs to have... This is a major philosophy moment with the arms tree that I think they need to revisit in general. So I'll unselect two-hand weapon spec. So there's two-hand weapon spec here, dual-wield spec here. While we are in the arms tree, I will point everyone down here, and I'll read these two talents. This is something we're going to talk about later, but, like, read this. While using two-handed swords or axes, your crit damage is increased by 20%, and your execute is a 10% increased crit chance. Or, if you have two-handed maces or polearms, the damage and duration of Colossus Smash is increased by 30%. Both of these have a very different playstyle. right, compared to one another. And one of them, obviously numbers-wise, would be better, but it'd be cool to be able to choose between both of them. But in reality, you're never really going to be choosing. You're going to be using the one that may be worse or not feel as good based on the mythic eye-level weapon you happen to loot off of a boss, right? So, and that's a problem, and it's the same. It's a similar problem to just having to spend talent points because you happen to be dual wielding or you happen to be using a two-hander. I think that their whole philosophy with like class fantasy, weapon specialization, like classic WoW shit needs to. I think they need to address that because some of this stuff doesn't really make a lot of sense.
It's such a simple fix as well. I caught a bit of your stream yesterday, and you were saying about just removing the weapon, like the specific weapon requirements to sharpen blades and blunt instruments, and then suddenly it's a really good choice. It's then not a choice that's then based on weapon. It would be a choice based on whichever's better, but if they're close enough that it doesn't matter, both have very distinct playstyle differences. One's clearly angling into execute, one's clearly angling into what would effectively be a more test of might build. But they're also going to be more beneficial to a different stat makeup. One's clearly focusing a little bit more on crit in terms of getting more crit damage out, and the other one's focusing on haste to fit more globals inside a longer Colossus Smash to get a bigger test of might. So if they were able to balance them close enough, you could then potentially do it based on what your stats looked like at the time, and then it's absolute freedom almost.
Yeah, I was just saying, like, if we had a situation again where we have something like a gavel, and say your build is optimized around sharpened blades, you can't pick sharpened blades then. You have to pick blunt instruments because gavel is OP, right?
Yeah, and Test of Might isn't like really tuned to be the best thing right now. Which, by the way, I hope Test of Might is. I think Test of Might fucking owns and it's super fun. But like,
I love Test of Might.
Like, but just imagine you love playing Test of Might, and you're like, damn, this is the reason I play Warrior. Like, Breath of Syndergosa is the only reason I play Frosty K, for example. So imagine you're just like a Test of Might Colossus Smash gamer, and you just loot a fat ass axe, right? And then it's just like, I have to play a different way of Arms Warrior that I don't want to because I happen to loot a weapon. That feels awful. So yeah, hopefully they look at that later. Okay, so this is it for this. I know Naowh's a turbo normie now, if you guys didn't know that, so he has to go to sleep soon.
No, actually, before, did we talk about Shockwave?
Kind of.
At all?
Just how it's in a really shitty spot of the tree. But why?
Yeah, no, because I have like playing a lot of Warrior in and Plus in both this expansion, definitely in BFA, but also now in Shadowlands. Like Shockwave and the CDR on Shockwave is like incredibly good for Mythic Plus, and I think it's a big it's like downside to a DPS warrior that you always bring a melee and you always compare like a DPS warrior with like a Windwalker monk or a rogue.
Yep.
And the Windwalker monk has, AoE stops and stuff, and the warrior, you will just lose AoE stops by bringing the warrior. And I don't see a DPS warrior ever taking Shockwave at the position of the tree right now. And I would love this. Yeah, exactly. And the Prot as well, like it hurts to take because usually the bottom is where you have your, are you gonna take Shockwave to sacrifice, whatever that's really powerful. And I would love to see them like move it up and make them more accessible to both the DPS specs, and also make it so that Prot warrior could probably even potentially talent into it without losing too much, because it is very, very. I don't know if you guys played a lot of M+ with Prot warrior, but if you have the CDR on it, it feels like it's up all the time, pretty much.
Yeah, it's super insane, and that's something where I think the issue at the top of the tree has to do with just stuff that's like more baseline or more baked in, and a few of things are already available to every spec, so they might not need to be selected. But gaining that point there would be nice. Like if I can use the shaman tree as an example, haven't used this as much recently because they like made it a little worse. But like when you still talent down and you grab every single thing you would ever want in your tree for any reason, when you're selecting the last couple of things in their tree, I'll show you like kind of where they're picking it. They are picking stun. Like here, I'm almost done with all the throughput. All right, they're like outside of like a couple of things that are really nice, they're like already chilling, right? And they're just picking what they want. And then it's like if you're in a dungeon, you can take Cap Totem, you can take Cudgel, right? But like for you guys, it's at the bottom. Now clearly with Warrior, this Shockwave here is totally out of place. It's surrounded by throughput. Why is Shockwave with the damage reduction at the bottom when in other trees that tech is just in the top of the tree, right? I think they will replace this with a potential new throughput ability, or what I would really like Blizzard to do is put anger management in the place of Shockwave. Move Shockwave near the, because anger management's available in all 3 spec trees. Move Shockwave up to the top and have it be able to be easily grabbed. You don't have to grab it every time, but it's just an option where, like, if you're doing dungeons, it's super good because there are times where you don't want it. And then that way you actually have like a cool anger management capstone thing at the bottom. And it'll also free up space in all of your trees to get anger management potentially by default, and then be able to grab some other stuff from what you have.
Just quickly on obviously Shockwave is garbage, but even when you look at, like, just to the right of it, Thunderous Roar and then Thunderous Aftershocks, the Aftershocks gives you a knockdown, which is roughly sort of a 0.3 to 0.5 second CC. You, in most cases, might honestly be better taking Thunderous Roar instead of Shockwave, because it's going to give you about as much CC if other stuns are used first.
But it's
and
going
it
to do
does
more damage. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just crazy. Obviously, I know Prot kind of suffers with that because you're going to want to get endurance training, but it's kind of the CC option as well as throughput or a decent throughput option for DPS. It just completely invalidates Shockwave. I hate it.
But would you hold your, like, dragon or whatever this damage ability is gonna be to stop something though? That's like
I feel like you could.
It's pretty RNG, like, because, like, if it doesn't, it's the knockdown's usually target capped as well, or at least it was with Night Fae, which is what that ability is, and, like, also knocking stuff down at the start of the cast kind of defeats the purpose. So I think Shockwave is still better than
I think
that.
the capstone also doesn't say that there's actually a knockdown effect. It just creates damage. It's not like Ancient Aftershock from Night Fae. It's just damage and rage.
It says it just at the beginning. It doesn't say it knocks them down multiple times, but there would be at least one.
Yeah,
but, I mean,
it's
given
probably
that
the initial use of it, yeah.
Yeah, but given the bleed itself is only 9 seconds and the damage is not tremendous, it's still, in my opinion, a better CC option than Shockwave would be, even if it's a longer cooldown, just because it has more damage.
I don't think you've ever played with it. Have you, Dan? Have you played, like, you haven't played a lot of Prot in Plus, have you? Like, I don't know, like, when I played Prot in, like, Mist and stuff, with the CDR and stuff, like, it is so incredibly broken.
Even in MDI, I took the Shockwave talent instead of Stormbolt because I thought Rumbling Earth was actually just better.
Yeah, it's a short stun, but it doesn't matter because it's up all the time. You just stop whatever is next. You don't have a kick, like, okay, we Shockwave. You know, it's so good. I don't know. I would love for DPS to have it as well.
Always better, right? Mythic Plus.
Yeah. Okay, and then also a lot of people in chat were very unhappy about the anger management tree. Suggestion. I actually am all the way there with you. I think it's one of those things where, like, instead of making it something, because if they put anger management in the tree, you would just want to pick it every time, or you would not have it, which would feel like shit. Because anger management is just like one of the coolest abilities that any class has. Like, just spending resource to reduce the cooldown of your stuff is insane. So making it maybe more baseline. I just think it's weird that it's like a focus in every single tree instead of just giving it to you. It just seems like
The best place for it, to be honest, is wherever the one-handed specialization and the Dauntless Duelist is. If you put AM there, like, everyone would be super happy, because those two things are, like, great to have, but they're not pivotal to our class role, right?
Ooh, I actually hard fuck with that. So you're saying put anger management in the middle here and then have...
Yeah.
I think you could have Dauntless Duelist where the dual wield thing is, or vice versa, and have, like, the leech on the left side and just have that be the one-handed, two-handed spec thing potentially, if they really want to go down that route. That actually kind of makes sense. And you'd path down there anyway. That's smart.
Isn't Dauntless just a bad talent though? Am I the only one that thinks that, like, it doesn't do anything, but it's
a raid boss
good.
Passive.
Yeah, but, like, it's too good that you cannot
right?
you cannot not take it. It's so broken that, like, 3% damage, you need to take this, but it doesn't change anything. It's not like an anger management. It's probably more powerful almost, but, like, you just have to take it no matter what. Yeah, that's how good it is.
My last Long Cloud take before moving on to the spec tree is, I think Lucid Dreams in 8.2 felt as good or better for Warrior than it did for any other class, both as, like, Prot damage like getting damage reduction in a key versus and Arms having, like, dude, Arms Test of Might execute with Lucid Dreams was absolutely insane to play.
Hard agree.
It felt so good.
So maybe the Long Cloud take is repurposing Lucid Dreams, similar to how you baked Condemn into Execute in one of these trees, by maybe baking that into some kind of, like, frothing. You go into this Berserker Rage kind of, Warrior, you're mad as fuck, get crazy rage generation. Could be really fun. I don't know if it was good for Fury at all. Probably not. But yeah, that was for Arms and Prot. It was like absolutely crazy good. All right, where is let's we're done with this. Let's do the Prot tree real quick. So what I'll do is let's start with Scott or Naowh kind of working together or going on your own and discussing, and obviously Pika, feel free to be involved as well, and doing a raid build for Prot Warrior, and then I'll have Pika lead a Mythic plus one, and then obviously all of you guys do both, right? I think Pika actually mainly Prots and Mythic plus, and the other two mainly do it in raid, although obviously Naowh did it in BFA. I also did it a decent bit in BFA. I have some takes near the bottom of the tree specifically, but we'll work with that. As far as the DPS players, we will be doing Fury after this, and then Arms last in that order. If you guys want to like go take a break and come back, you can in like 30 to 35 minutes most likely, or you can stay and also contribute as well if that's important to you. It's totally up to you. All right, so Scott or Naowh, where are we going for a Prot Warrior raid boss build?
Getting all the good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think we had a pretty similar one. I think we just had one difference at the end when we compared them just before. But you take the first 5 points for sure because you locked into doing that.
That's something I actually love before we move down. That's like the fact that you go down in every tree. Like this is the first time like I ever see this in a class tree that you go down like left, middle, and right, and you just pick whatever you want in each, separate
it's just
tree.
a bunch of
And it's like
pointers.
it's really really cool, and I love the design of it.
It is goated pathing. The warrior pathing is actually I think even just looking about the Prot Warrior tree and the other two are similar. This is I think the best pathed tree of any that they've released so far. It's symmetrical. It makes sense. Things relate to one another. They're not like random and in the wrong spot. It's actually so good.
And they just take like all our legendaries from Shadowlands and just bake it into your tree. Instead of using one, you have all.
Yeah, I mean, every single time I clicked a talent as warrior, I was like, wow, I just get the best talent in the game for free. Like, and I did that like 5 times because they have so many insane ones. But here I would take Booming Voice, which is the one on the left.
Yep.
I'd take Shield Slam in the middle, and I'd take the one on the left there as well.
Brace for Impact. Yeah.
Yeah, and on the next row, I'd take all of them but the parry chance, because parry's not a very good start for warrior, because blocking is the main thing. I'd take the rage from the bleeds instead of the other one you selected.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, rage from bleeds.
Interesting thing to note,
No, that
is
one's
that
optional.
The Blood Surge doesn't work with deep wounds right now on Alpha. It only works with Rend.
That
Yeah,
sounds,
I mean, if they,
sounds like a bug, right? Because I mean, it's literally.
I think
a
if they
bleed.
fixed that. Yeah, I did feel like I wasn't getting that much rage shen from it, but it still feels good enough to take. And then on the next road down, I would take the Thunderclap, the reduction one. Yeah, Thunderlord.
Yeah, Thunderlord is so good. Yeah, holy man.
I missed
take
that
the
so
shield
much.
wall.
Yeah.
Take the shield wall in the middle.
Oh sure.
Oh well,
Yep.
into the fray there, and
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. I do think Heavy Repercussions has really awesome potential with enduring defenses, especially with a lot of natural haste, which obviously it's kind of against the grain with Into the Fray, but yeah.
I mean, right now on Alpha, Into the Fray's like 40 items of haste, so it's like pretty good. It's unreal how low your stats are, so like that's literally insane.
Yeah.
And then on a raid boss, I think sudden death's pretty decent for single target. I don't think like the duration on shield block matters that much. Like warrior isn't a good tank if you're tanking all the time anyways, so like chances are you're not going to play it if you have to do that. So sudden death's just a big damage increase. Anger management's just staple. And the wall is like one of the best legendaries they've ever put in, so like getting that for free is insane.
Yeah, one thing I kind of don't like about this is
as
this is like so good that you would never really consider taking Unbreakable Will, I don't think. And this is something that I do like. This and the like Blood DK Vamp Blood version of this was actually like kind of clutch on some raid fights, putting your like weakest members of the group into that group and like kind of keeping them alive. But I feel like you would almost certainly play the wall.
It's
I mean,
cool. Like,
there
it has
might be
like
times.
in like Emerald Nightmare, there was that one boss that you go into portals in 5-man groups, and like things like that make it pretty interesting to have at least you have the ability to have Unbreakable Will and not have to run wall. But the wall is just so good 90% of the time.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it makes sense that it's a choice node, and yeah, you're mentioning like Mythic Plus, dude. If you're not considering like Unbreakable Will in like a Mythic Plus scenario, then I feel like it needs to be like kind of buffed, because I feel like just imagine how insane that would be for like a party wide cooldown on like a really high tyrannical like raid wide hit or party wide hit,
Yeah.
right? But if you're not considering it,
and
then it's like,
then-
what are you doing? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd take Bolster and Punish. I think Punish is pretty good. Juggernaut's just gonna kill you on most raid encounters, I think. Like you're either gonna like be forced to drop it, which makes it not worth, or it's gonna kill you because you can't execute every 8 seconds.
Then I think they would,
feel like-
if they want Prot Warriors to execute, I think they need to make it cheaper or less of a situation where you're going to die when you use it, and giving you a talent to select for that. Because like Juggernaut and Mythic Plus, for example,
Yeah.
let's say bosses don't hit you very hard, like they're not going to live long enough to get like insane value out of Juggernaut in most cases. And like in a raid, you just cannot tank a Mythic hard boss and be executing in real progression. Like you will die 100%. So like I just it's for it being an off tank thing, it's going to drop when you're tanking most likely, even though you can probably throw one up every 8 seconds. I'm just not sure about this for Prot right now, but we can talk about that later.
Yeah, I mean Punish is a pretty decent talent anyways, but yeah, I mean I could see you going Ela depending on like how strong Warrior is outside of.
Is Punish actually just more damage than Juggernaut probably in a lot of situations? Plus you don't actually even have to think about it that much. Like Shield Slam's
Yeah,
pretty
it's
big.
If you can
fight.
stack it.
Yeah, fight dependent as well. Like obviously if it executes all that matters, then you're always gonna prefer Juggernaut for damage. But Punish is decent. I mean Shield slams a lot of your damage, so.
Yeah. Okay, moving. We just unlocked the capstone with an even 20.
Yeah, I mean this is the biggest problem here. Is all of these are really broken because they all give stats. What I personally did was I did one in that. Oh well,
Okay.
that's like a flex point, pretty much what I'm putting there. So you could just take that out for
Okay,
now.
sure.
I
Yeah.
put 2 in the middle one because you have to path down the middle. You have to get Indom. Like it's the best talent ever put in the game, so you have to get Indom. And I like the one at the bottom. I like the cheat death for Warrior. I mean, well, if you read the tooltip, I like it, but
Yeah, no.
depending on what that
we
lands
will
on.
talk about this when we're done pathing it. This is like a whole ass conversation.
The one that to the left of Indom's pretty solid as well.
The
I think
current
it
tier-
says 1 stack, but it's 8. You have to do 8 casts of
Yeah,
Rage, but I mean
like
it's
the current
pretty strong.
preset.
Yeah, it's pretty strong. And then I take the 2 on that, and I take Revenger and the one at the bottom for Revenger.
Okay.
And then you basically have 2 points here where, I mean, depending on how the cheat death one looks, I would probably go that. Because Warrior, I mean, for raiding, like 1 point in that versus like an extra point in the stat one is probably just better because, you know, you could save a pull here or there.
And it's also we have to
yeah.
talk about so spell block as a thing, and then also Battle Scarred Veteran. Let's start with Battle Scarred Veteran. So for people, how it works, as far as I'm aware, it does not actually function as a cheat death. I don't know if it's a Will of the Necropolis style where it will activate and give you the damage reduction. If something hits you from 100 to 0, I imagine you will die and it will not kick in, right? It's
Yeah,
when
it does
it's
not.
yeah, so it's when you reach 35%, it will give you on alpha currently it's a 75% damage increase for 8 seconds on a 1 minute ICD. This is probably better served for Warrior than every single other tank because they don't have an active heal like Word of Glory or Frenzied Regen or any of that stuff outside of Impending. Their main rage spent outside of just upfront mitigating with shield block is just putting absorbs on them with Ignore Pain. So they are the most deterministic tank to get to 35%, as opposed to a Blood Decay. You're like not doing that all the time. When you go below 35% on a Warrior, you feel it, right? That's when you are definitely in danger. And so what that means is you could absolutely target packs to have this proc. Now the reason I'm mentioning targeting packs is because I think they're going to increase the ICD of this for sure. They're going to have to do 2 things. They're going to have to reduce the damage reduction that it gives by a fuckload if it remains a 1 minute cooldown, or if they want it to be this super strong, you know, procs once every like 4 pulls in Mythic Plus or twice on a raid fight situation, it needs, and it's going to remain a 75% DR. You're talking a 3 or 4 minute ICD bare minimum. Like it's because it would still be insane. Just imagine every 4 minutes in Mythic Plus, picking a pack where you know you'll have a 75% DR before you have to pop any of your like last stand or anything like that. Like that is insane, right?
It's essentially the same as like meta, right? Like Avengers Demon Hunters in Mythic Plus, they plan to proc their cheat a lot of the time. They're like, okay, just let me cheat on this pack because they need meta in a certain way. and or even Purgatory, right? So in such a way, you're not gonna proc it every single pull. So yeah, definitely the increase in the internal cooldown is necessary for it to kind of come to life, or it's just completely broken.
Yeah, I believe it's. I actually really like the high power level. I think if you're going
Yeah,
to
I'm with you there.
go ahead now.
No, like the high power level is like definitely should stay. They should definitely if they made this like 30%, it would be I don't even know how I would take it to be honest. Like
Yeah.
30% is not a lot, but if it's like 75%, even if it's like a 6 minute cooldown, I would probably still take it.
Yep,
It's
it's just
just
too
like
powerful.
You can just save pulls, right? Like
It's
it
too
just
powerful.
saves a pull, and like it's
You can save a pull with a mistake, or you can plan around it, and its power level is so high that it can be, pretty game changing for a tank to have this. So I really like the idea. It doesn't really seem like a choice. Like even with a higher ICD, I think you're gonna take this in like all content. It's just too powerful. So I imagine they will nerf that. I would just definitely point out that I'm pretty sure we're all on the same page that I would rather them nerf the ICD rather than the power level. If they nerf the power level and it's just like a low ICD damage reduction thing, in a lot of content, I just don't know if that sounds even really that interesting. Where the other one gives you like something you can play around and gives Prot a unique power level.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's one of those things where it's a bit scary to give to tanks because then you kind of like Vengeance was played a long time, and like Last Resort's a very strong like talent. It can save dungeons so often, and I think if only half the tanks have cheat, then it basically limits what you want to play effectively. Like Prot Warrior was playable and didn't have a cheat before, so like I don't know if they necessarily need it. Although it is cool, right? I mean, I want it, but it might just make it a bit too strong. Is my only concern.
Yeah. And then the other two big
yeah.
abilities to talk about are Spell Block and Shield Charge. So let's start with Spell Block. This is something, obviously, you mentioned that like Warrior's biggest fear is bleeds, which they dealt with a little bit in Bitter Immunity, and casted spells on you are just dot damage in general. And Spell Block is basically just giving Warriors Holy Shield, but obviously Warriors possess the ability to have 100% block up time for the duration of this. So this is even better than Holy Shield in some examples. I think this is very, very situational, though. Because even in the case where, there's one hard pull of a dungeon where you're like, oh my god, having Spell Block will make these casters just not kill me as much. That's one point where if it's only one pack and you only get one really good use of this, you're talking about like missing out on 5% stam, armor, and 2% haste for the whole dungeon, which like in most scenarios, if you live that pack and you can save maybe Battle Scarred Veteran for it, or Shield Wall for it, where you can live anyway, even though Spell Block makes it easier, you're picking a talent to use once a whole dungeon or boss instead of just having passive stuff the whole time at like a pretty high clip. Like this is a high power level. What do you guys think about Spell Block?
I think like the 14 seconds, like it's not the thing about Mythic Plus, right? If it's a high magic damage dungeon or a pack, it's gonna last you more than 14 seconds. And whatever the situation is, like it's not really gonna help you enough. And in that situation where something's about to be missed or a cast is about to get off, you already have Spell Reflect for that, right? So you already have something to deal with that. It also doesn't really fit the theme of Warrior. Like Spell Block is kind of like a paladin thing, so it doesn't really like fit in perfectly. But yeah, just in general, it's like a 2-minute CD. It doesn't really fix the problems that we're having now. And most of the time, like you're gonna get screwed as a Prot Warrior because somebody missed the kick, which then you don't have time to react with the Spell Block anyways.
I think for me it just seems overkill. I think it's overkill because I think
I'm with you on the overkill, but I'm not with you like with the missed kicks and stuff. I think like it's like super good, but I feel like you already have so many, especially with getting like
you have
die by the
sword, right?
Yeah, you're getting getting even more defensives in Dragonflight.
Demo Shout having 0 CD because you get that legendary for free now is just like you're basically like immune to damage, like, and you also have an extra bleed removal in your main tree. I guess you had Kyrian before, but like you're getting like the bleed removals and stuff. So like I feel like it's overkill. I don't think you would ever play this in M+, maybe for raiding somewhere, but like in M+, I think you would rather kite and play the other's talent and have this talent. Like on Jailer, like it would probably be good on Jailer because I don't think Prot would live that dot because you're not even in melee range.
The only dungeon I remember that I think you would play this in is King's Rest. It's like the only dungeon I could think of where it's like that first room and Zool on like higher keys would just be like this like increases. Well, it's hard to tell because back then Prot Warrior is also insanely broken. So like if Warrior's power level was like more in line, this would have been like for that specific dungeon, just living and doing it would be really powerful. I also think that spell block is probably better in lesser coordinated groups than it would be in like a high-end group. Like something like having actual kicks assigned on things that matter and getting them routinely versus like, you know, most people in like a sub 15 key probably not kicking too often, right? So like having the ability to like live on a tank more often without a coordinated group, I feel like spell block maybe has a lot of power in it rather than something passive, but I'm not sure. And then what do you guys think about shield charge? It seems really cool, but also very underwhelming.
It's a tuning thing. Like Ravager's cringe just because like Ravager deals the same damage to one target as that does, you know, and it does AoE, right? And it gains more rage, so it just seems like a no-brainer to go Ravager. Also, the tree leading to it, that one gives stamina and the other one gives strength, so you want to go Ravager always right now.
Also, a good thing to know is like with Enduring Alacrity, whether you put 1 point or 2 point into it, you still get 2% haste. I'm not sure if that's like a tooltip thing, and you're only getting the 5% stam and armor.
Oh, interesting.
Point,
no, that's
right?
almost certainly not a tooltip thing. That some of them have actually worked like that. That's the same thing with focused vigor
it's
as
the
well.
same with, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
but focus one
So you
gives
get
you
5%
strength,
strength, yeah.
And the
which
same
is, like,
one with the
way
one in the
better.
middle. This one just gives you block chance per point instead of double the block.
Yeah,
value.
you have to go there for Indom though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, when shield charge is like immediate, like right away, you kind of get that threat. But the great thing about Ravager, at least especially in Mythic Plus, it gives you that 12 seconds of basically immunity at the start of a pull, right? Because of the amount of rage it's giving you. You're getting a ton of healing from Indomitable by the amount of rage you're spending during the Ravager time. Whereas something like shield charge, it's like all right up in the front, and you get that huge kind of burst of rage and stuff like that. But you'll have to kite sooner.
Yeah, I assume the talent at the bottom that goes with shield charge is supposed to be 300 rage over time, but I don't know how much time. That's the problem with Warrior right now, is a lot of the tooltips are very like weirdly worded, but like 300 rage over time's a lot, but it's just gonna lose to Ravager? What am I even saying?
Ravager. Yeah, you're good.
Every time, yeah.
I'm surprised that you guys actually like shield charge. I was like gonna bet that everyone's gonna be like, no, we don't like this ability, because I feel like one of the main reasons I don't like current Prot Warrior in Shadowlands is because you have to play Reprisal. And there's nothing I hate more than having to, kite away from mobs to charge back in for my shield block. And I feel like this ability is kind of similar. I guess it's a 45-second cooldown, and plus, for example, you could probably open with it, right? But like on a raid boss and stuff, having to leave melee to charge back as a tank and reposition bosses, and it's not good tank design. And that's like, when I saw this ability, I was like, no way I'm gonna ever play this one. I would play Ravager any
It's
day
just the
of the week.
worst thing.
Yeah.
Death to Reprisal. Don't get me wrong. Reprisal is the worst thing ever. It's like a band-aid fix they put into the game that makes like our play completely annoying, especially for DPS, man. Have you ever heard like the Warlocks complaining about Rain of Fire? But the amount that they have to move and compared to like a Blood DK being the stand in place. Yeah, Reprisal, I'm just so happy that it's not in this tree, really.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that it's annoying, but like at the same time, like I think the tuning on it's the biggest problem. Like I don't mind it existing. Like if it did double Ravager's damage, but just to a single target, like I would take it, right? And I would play around it, and I don't mind that. But like right now, it literally does the same damage, but it's all single target.
So with Death to Reprisal involved in raid, how do you feel with this raid build compared to how you feel currently on live? What's your power level? What's your block up time? How's it going to feel to play this class?
I think it's insane. You get bolster, like you lost bolster with anger management before, and now you have that back. It doesn't affect last stand, anger management, but like at the same time, like I think Ben played last stand on Danwarr when we were progressing that on Prot Warrior the first time, and like obviously having anger management and bolster like is just going to be so big. Like it's so nice to have. I mean from the tree so far, I think Warrior's definitely the strongest, but it's all the tuning game in the end.
What do you guys think?
I think Prot Warrior is gonna be sick, but I'm mainly like excited for the M+ part of it. Like raiding is also nice, but playing like the BFA, like I love the Warrior. You know how much Warrior I played in BFA.
BFA
but, like,
Warrior was goated. It was hard goated.
Yeah, and now like that playstyle is back with like bolster, and I'm super excited for like the M+ part of it. For the raiding part, I'm not as sure. I mean, they're gonna be strong for sure, but like I'm just super excited for M+ part of it.
Yeah, they also
plus portion it gets you like that 100%, like basically 100% uptime of shield block again. Especially if you change a couple of nodes, like heavy repercussions, for instance. And you still get like all the benefits of all the legendaries in Shadowlands, which makes Prot Warrior like super tanky and kind of brings you back to the BFA Thunderclap. Because right now Thunderclap is like one of our lower priority, whereas Thunderclap will be quite a high priority in Dragonflight.
Yeah, that's one thing I wanted to point out before we move on to the Mythic Plus side of things, because that's where this is gonna get pretty crazy. I do like the idea in a raid environment, potentially depending on like how heavy the auto attacks are in a boss, where enduring defenses and heavy repercussions could be, you know, not as good potentially as sudden death or into the fray, but what it could mean is like a very binary, when you tank the boss for 30 seconds and then have someone taunt off of you, you can have shield block actually up for that entire 30 seconds, which would just be really powerful outside of like actually assigning cooldowns to things. And I think I'm glad that they actually added these two things together, and the ability to take both. I think that's like pretty powerful. And then, and still, maybe it's hard to remember, but also they have all of this plus also Die by the Sword, which is just like
You have so much. It's
insane.
Crazy.
Even Die by the Sword, like the parry chance is way more insane in Mythic Plus than Raid, but obviously it's still good. A 30% DR 2-minute cooldown, if you give that to any tank, that's good enough to like swing things. Like that's just that's a 30% is a big enough number to provide coverage, and even on that short of a cooldown, it's just so good. Okay, how would we fuck this up to go full Mythic Plus damage banger? Which I'm assuming where we would be going. Pika.
To be honest, like it's not. To be honest, the tree doesn't change like too much for Mythic Plus. You're essentially you're still taking the 5 at the top. You're still going to be taking Booming Voice on the left, Strategist, and then Brace for Impact as well.
Okay.
That's like your first 8,
so it's
right?
the exact
And then-
same. Okay, this is interesting.
Yeah.
Then I want to ask all of you. So you guys don't see a scenario right now where you'd take Best Serve Cold or Unnerving. You just have too much rage gen.
Yeah, you can.
I want to take Unnerving for sure. I think Unnerving is super good.
Yeah. So you're going to have an extra point later, which you can kind of.
Oh, cool.
favor
Okay,
for-
we can come back to it. I
Just
didn't know
one.
you were building it. That's cool.
Yeah. And the reason you don't take Best Serve Cold is because it's becoming a Thunderclap meta, right? So in Shadowlands, it was a Revenge meta where you're spamming Revenge, Shield Slam, Revenge, Shield Slam.
Which is
and
terrible, by the way. It's
and then
so not
Thunderclap
fun.
was like your lower priority, right? And with the meta moving towards basically Thunderclapping on cooldown with Unstoppable Force coming from the Warrior tree, you don't have a GCD enough to be using Revenge on cooldown. So that's why you're not taking that. And Nerving is a choice that you can make with your extra talent a little bit at the end, right?
Sure.
So then we go into the next area, and you have Challenging Shout. It's like, interesting to note that this is moving from a 4-minute to a 2-minute cooldown, which is massive, right? This is like helps wipe prevention like a ton whenever the tank dies, or just in general to gain threat.
And
then
a
you
very
go
powerful
Devastator.
part of it, before we move to the other things, they also gave a tangent node to Challenging Shout that allows it to interrupt all spell casting within 12 yards and also prevents any spell in that school for 6 full seconds with an interrupt on a 2-minute CD. Not something you'll use in every dungeon, but very powerful on certain packs, I think. Not sure if you'll have the
it
point
can
for
be.
it.
It's not as good as Silent Sigil, right? Because
Yeah.
you have to wait until the mob is casting or it does nothing. So it's not as good as Silent Sigil, but it is there, like you said, if you really, really need it. It is, again, dungeon dependent. And then we move on to Devastator on the right. We're not going to take Parry. Parry can be situational depending on the damage profiles, if there's a lot of bleeds and stuff like that, but there's just too much things that are really kind of good in our tree. The next would be Blood Surge for the amount of the rage you're getting, especially if it works with deep wounds eventually. And then you just kind of have to take Fueled by Violence.
Yeah,
And then the
actually,
next
I'm
one-
interested with that.
Good.
So all of you guys have mentioned this, and this is true, and you just have to take Fueled by Violence. Would you want to take Fueled by Violence alone?
Right now, it
Never.
does like less than there's like 3% healing overall. Right now, if you put it in live.
So I would say that
Yeah,
both
it's
both
bad.
Challenging Shout and Fueled by Violence don't feel great to move down, because so far look at the nodes that kind of stick out on this tree. Ignore Pain, Revenge, Demo Shout, Devastate, Last Stand, and then Shield Wall. Those are all like something you will always have as a Prot Warrior no matter what, and they're kind of highlighted and they're square and they're huge. And then right here, on each side pathing down, again basically a required point, is Fueled by Violence and Challenging Shout. Two things that are innately not required in rating specifically, and then you could argue that you would always want Challenging Shout in Mythic Plus. But yeah, like I just think that it's interesting that they have you take two pretty much not required things to path down the tree, but can talk about that more later.
Next line would be Thunderlord. We talked about how good that is. That's even more so in Mythic Plus because the amount of mobs, you're always getting it basically 4.5 seconds reduced. Shield Wall, and then Bolster.
Okay.
And
Wow,
then the last
very
thing,
similar.
Yeah. And last thing, you're going to go Heavy Repercussions because the shield block uptime really matters in Mythic Plus. Enduring Defenses, Anger Management, the Wall, and then this last one, like personally, I think you're going to play Punish always for Fortified, and then Juggernaut, I think can be very good in Tyrannical, especially like I know even like the Tyrannical dungeons we do right now, this Juggernaut, Ashen Juggernaut in its current iteration has been able to just destroy bosses. Juggernaut has just been insane. Like in a 30 Necrotic Wake we were doing, one DPS died and the Juggernaut was able to carry and break every single shield on its own.
Very cool. Okay, so we'll stick with Punish for now, though. That's fine.
Yeah, and then down on the final row, you're going to put 1 point into Alacrity. I mean, that's like kind of throw it, but it's 2%. It's good. Double 2 points into Shield Specialization, 2 into Focus Vigor, then 1 into Outburst, 1 into Indomitable, 1 into Ravager, and then 1 into Battle Scarred Veteran.
Okay, and then now we have a single point. So that point is either 5% stamina and armor, but not an increased in haste, which would make it a little bit more attractive. You have the 2 seconds more on Ravager. You have 3% parry and unnerving focus. Yeah.
Or Show of Force, like so unnerving, Show of Force, 2 seconds of Ravager. Like it's like kind of like whatever you feel like you most need.
Unnerving focus sounds real good.
It is very good, especially in execute phase.
I'm thinking it's more good just for avatar uptime. Like I remember, like this brings back like Lucid. You also have this in Shadowlands when it comes from Shadowlands, but everything about Prot in a plus is like avatar. Like you just need the more avatar uptime you have, like the better you're off, And having more rage means more avatar. That's why.
Yeah,
I really like.
It's a little bit changing because the last stand is having that now 2 minutes, right, instead of 3 minutes. But it's still not. It's not going to be like BFA style where you can use it on nonstop because it's still not a proc off. It's still not affected by AM. Yeah, I definitely think unnerving focus can be very good. It's just whatever this last point is, like it kind of play depending on tuning.
I think it's cool that they made Last Stand a 2 minute instead of a 3 to kind of give you a little bit of that, like what it felt like to have a little anger management reduction. It's just not as often as it would be. Which honestly, like, I'm not gonna like adding Last Stand to anger management again with this current tree sounds like completely absurd. Like, just
it would just be too busted. Because then you could play into the fray. I think you could play into the fray with that, and then.
I did play into the fray. I was surprised actually when the repercussions were plus.
You don't have enough shield block uptime. I tested it on alpha, and without.
Yeah, but on alpha you also have 4% haste. I don't think the scaling is there. I don't think you will have 4% haste when you're level 70 when the game comes out. Yeah, I mean, did it fix the haste scaling? Because I had 5% haste on every class I played, and I don't think that's correct.
Yeah, I mean, it's really just going to depend on how much shield block uptime you can have, right? Because anything lower than like 75% can feel real awful in Mythic Plus because then it requires a lot more kiting.
Yeah, but also 10% haste is a lot of extra, damage and self-healing, and you can always cover with like ring or binding if you don't have shield.
Or parry, right? Like you can literally cover with parry now.
Yeah.
So
like, we're different, I guess, in that tool. But...
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about things on this tree that are currently never taken. We already brought up Shield Charge and its issues. We talked about the potential value and improved challenging shout. We talked about potentially taking Show of Force when decided between this and Unnerving Focus. What about Spiked Shield or this Choice Node? It seems like this Spiked Shield is just a total only Mythic Plus and a total tuning thing.
I wanted to ask Pika if you tried it.
Damage. It does I think 3%. Like I've asked multiple people and what they've seen from it. And overall, it's doing like 3% overall damage. So like the tuning is just really awful right now. And it's not doing like any damage.
Okay, so just need to up that. I also think that's just me. I think that's insanely boring. Like just doing.
Yeah, it's really boring. Yeah. But if it's tuned to be super good, you have to play it. That's for overall damage.
Yeah, but that sucks. Yeah. Like having to play a super boring talent because it happens to be really good. Like that's unavoidable with some classes. Like that will always happen. It's just like I don't know. That just seems really uninspired, especially because it's blocking an attack too. That doesn't involve natty dodging one or parrying one, right? It's like it doesn't seem like it's fully thought out. And then also,
I think it's the classic.
Dude, I can't imagine ever spending a point with Prot Warrior right now on really best serve cold with like the current Thunderclap thing, and then also Brutal Vitality. Brutal Vitality seems just bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's just.
I don't know
a
why
voice
that's still in the game. Like I've
Yeah,
never
and
seen
also
like,
improved heroic throw is literally the most unreal. Like I don't know when you'd ever play that. Like I don't know what that
Awful.
is. Yeah, like I mean, what is that? Like why is it even in the game?
yeah, fueled by violence is in the exact same category where like you would
Yeah,
never play
it's-
this, but like you just forced to take this one because you can't progress, right? Like this is also one of these you would never ever take if you had.
I
this
was talking with like a friend and with Prot Warrior, and like even rather than heroic throw inflicting deep wounds, if it made heroic throw get rid of the minimum distance, it would be a better talent.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, it's literally unreal. Like
So I think
that's really bad. Yeah.
this choice node needs to be like completely reimagined.
I think the parry chance in the middle is also very weird. Like warrior isn't a parry class. Like you already block everything, so parrying, like you're not gonna like you could take that if there was like heavy bleed dungeons where you could parry the bleed, but like that's not fun, right? Like just having a higher chance at not dying on a pack because you parry is.
You just don't have the points to even consider. Like this point alone, 3% parry per point is not a bad point. Like that's across the board. If you look at like every point that exists, like if you technically equate that to a 3% damage reduction, not really, but like that's the way you look at it. I mean that's not bad. It's just that just seems weird that you never have the option to take this really because you just have no points to really throw around. The other stuff is just way more powerful. The way that you make these trees the best is you try outside of the stuff you have to get mandatory at the top. Every single point you spend through this tree progressively getting a little bit more important, so the capstones have value into investing in them. You want each singular point to have somewhat similar value to other singular points. That's what the issue with this is. Why would you ever take 3% parry when you're technically competing with enduring defenses, sudden death, the wall, unbreakable wall? That's what these points are. These are all optional points. You can path down to the middle through anger management and not have to take them. That just it doesn't seem like the power level is there with that. It's obviously under thought of if you're giving parry to a Prot Warrior, right? It doesn't really fit in with the theme.
It goes against.
Yeah.
Goes against what they do. I mean, I think a way you could try and fix the tree a little is make, instead of the line from challenging shout to shield wall and fueled by violence to shield wall, you could get rid of those and put it from Devastator to Thunderlord, and the opposite side the same thing.
Blood Surge to...
Just so you can skip. But like, I feel like that's getting around the issue of like fueled by violence is just so bad that you don't want to take it. Like if they just fixed that, you wouldn't need to do it. But I think right now that would be better than what we have right now.
It's the same with challenging shout though. That is very situational.
Yeah.
You could play it somewhere maybe, but most
like
of the
putting
time
Devastator in its place, like moving like the two middle like side ones that you're currently taking to the side trees would just be better than what it is right now, and having that middle row be like a choice between the three like utility things. But
yeah,
the fuel by violence is something you just never take. You would just never take.
Yeah, it's that's the only saving grace of this, like how it's designed now, is that that talent will see play because you have to take it. But
yeah, maybe outside of getting rid of it, the potential buff is that you're now rending a lot as well. So maybe it could also
it could just be bleeds,
just percentage of all bleed damage dealt. Yeah, but then you're already stacking leech, so like. I'm pretty sure Warrior is going to be the strongest self-healing class that isn't doing it as part of their kit, obviously. So, like, I think they'd be doing more overall healing than, like, a Paladin would, and less than a DK and a Vengeance Demon Hunter. But they would be, it would just all be, like, passive Leech or Fueled by Violence healing if they made it the other blades.
I mean, Indomitable is like Scott said, it's the most broken talent. And that's kind of your self-healing in most cases.
Yeah, it's
that's
kind of
also
doubling
why...
down on that. Yeah.
It's just passive, though. It's
also...
not reactive, like all the other ones are. Like other.
Yeah, I mean, you're spamming rage the entire time. Like it's more of like a hot on you the entire time you exist, just spamming rage and getting healed.
Dude, this is. I feel like this is a good tree. Like it's a good tree overall. You're powerful. I just think it's the same issue. Prot has the same issue in the Spec tree versus the class tree, where both of them feel powerful, but there isn't a lot of choice. You're definitely a way better tank than you are currently. I think they are likely to address Die by the Sword for Prot in some way, like we talked about earlier. I think they're likely to address the cooldown, the ICD of Battle Scarred Veteran. But I wonder what they could do to make a few of these choices feel better just for it to be perfect. And I think the biggest problem areas are Fueled for Violence, Challenging Shout, just positioning of those two, and then maybe the existence of Fueled by Violence at all.
and then the spike shield very boring, and then improved heroic throws there. I could see a world where you play Show of Force. I could see a world where you do challenging shout, and it's a choice. But like specifically those feel weird. And then I think we all agree that like shield charge kind of needs maybe another look at. Doesn't feel. I mean, the fact that Ravager does just as much damage to a single target and also is way more valuable in AoE just means that you're never going to play this.
Yeah, like hear me out. Like two things that they should bring back that could fix like or change over of some of these talents is my favorite things from BFA was like conflict and strife, because right now the thing about Prot Warrior and the talent trees, we don't really have a slow, right? Like I mean you have the basic Thunderclap slow, but nothing to increase it like Blood DKs have or like Paladins have with Consecrate. There's nothing that really helps us with like controlling mob speed on our own. And the other one is something Shadowlands did very well was baking just overall defense into Avatar, right? Whenever you have Avatar uptime, you just take 10% less damage right now. And that really helps us fight the hardest things, again, with being bleed and magic damage.
I would love to see Bastion of Might coming back. Was that what you said? Or did you say something else?
I said the conflict.
You said conflict and strife. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
I love the route, but it was them having to balance the game around the conflict. There was so many bugs, and like you could stand there with Avatar in the end of the expansion and perma-root mobs and not take a single point of damage for your entire Avatar. I don't think that's like how they want.
Yeah,
they wanted to play the game, you know.
I'm trying to think of ways too where in this tree you guys can gain some extra points for choice rather than taking things that feel so powerful that you would always select them. I think one way too that my chat actually brought up is making Devastator and Devastate a choice node, because you're only ever going to play one or the other, and having to select Devastate and then an upgraded Devastate 2 points later that isn't even directly connected feels strange. And that would also just give you a straight up point in the tree.
Yeah. I don't know why
They also need to-
Devastate's such a weird thing. Like you have so many GCDs to press already, you can't Devastate ever, so...
Yeah, I also feel like they need to nerf the bottom 3 2-point nodes, because missing out on 5% stamina and armor just feels really bad.
Yeah,
But
dude.
you don't really have the points to like...
Dude, compare this to like every other class that exists. Even Ural's like other specs at the bottom of your tree. You're choosing between like mastery, 2% mastery, haste, crit, or verse, and then you all per point are getting 5% armor and stamina, and on the first point you also get that same thing. Like that is so powerful.
10% strength. That's on the right side. You're never gonna not take that.
Yeah, it's too strong. Okay, so I think we're pretty good here. Any final takes on Prot? I think like the answer you want to have at the end of this is, how does Prot Warrior feel in Mythic Plus and in Raid compared to how it is now? Forget all choice, just pure player power. Like how powerful is your character in content based on the tools it has, not tuning. Prot Warrior, maybe more than any tank so far, has gained power level. It seems like a way more cracked. It seems, and honestly, I feel like Warriors paid for this in this expansion. Like BFA Warrior was so fun to play, and Shadowlands Warrior was just a much worse design. And this is like, you guys had to go through that hell to get this. This is now Prot Warrior that you get. You guys have paid your dues for the last 2 years.
Yeah, if you like BFA Prot Warrior, you will like Dragonflight Prot Warrior. Is basically what it's like. It's just a more cracked version of BFA Prot Warrior.
Oh, you're also gonna get a tier set on top of this too.
I was gonna say it also depends on dungeon, like lane, how they work a lot. Because Shadowlands has, like we discussed earlier, a ton of bleeds and like cast and dots and magic hits, which really punishes Warrior. Meanwhile, in BFA, yeah, it had a bit of magic and stuff, but the dungeons were generally a lot more melee heavy compared to what they are now. They're still very melee heavy, but I feel like the dungeons were just a lot better designed for Warrior in BFA compared to Shadowlands. Because there's so many bad dungeons for Warrior
they
now.
made it that Spell Reflect just deflects a lot of things in Shadowlands, whereas in BFA it reflected, which is what made it so strong. But yeah, if you have another expansion full of magic and bleed damage, Prot Warrior probably won't be the best one, even though they have such a strong kit.
All right, cool. And then the one thing is the power level is very high, we think, but it's kind of dependent on the content. That's a very good take. Go ahead.
Very broken in Raid. Very broken in Raid.
But there is not a lot of choice, and there are some dead talents in the tree for sure. Like there have been other, I would say, like Prot Warriors are not complaining. You guys are in a good spot, but there's always things to improve, and definitely one of their main points on the talent tree is making sure there's actual legitimate choice. There are trees that have great talents just like this, but you also have different paths you can go down. making Devastator and Devastate a choice node, maybe moving the pathing around to where you aren't forced into taking Fueled for Violence. They actually do the choices in this tree. You can gain 3 points right now by allowing the pathing to go to this level without taking Fueled for Violence and Challenging Shout. We can argue that Fueled for Violence shouldn't even be on the tree, but you immediately have 3 more points to slam in Improved Challenging Shout, in Show Force, in whatever, not capstone level, but like in the middle, and that would feel way better. And then this note on the right being fixed. All right, that's cool. That's probably all we're gonna do for Prot. We will have a follow-up conversation to kind of go over the changes. Very short, much shorter than this. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me.
All right, Critcake and Dang, thank you guys for waiting. There was a lot to get with Prot. Both of you guys play both specs, so I will have you all both give input just like all 3 of them did. However, just for the ease, I will have each of you run down your own tree. I'll have Dan go through Fury, and then Critcake, I'll have you go down Arms. Obviously, every single decision, the person who is not running through it, feel free to come in with any feedback or critique of the actual decisions that they're making you make or anything like that. As much of that can be covered as possible. Okay. Let us start with Fury. Dan, first of all, what do you think about this tree in general before we kind of go down it?
I'm not too unhappy about it. I think that what does feel bad is having just the absolute vast number of stat nodes at the very end into the capstone area. Like, having what is effectively 8 points of 16% worth of stats, it just feels they're boring to take, and then they also feel bad when you can't take them because there's so many of them, especially early on when you're kind of starved for stats anyway, because it's just so much free throughput that you're going to be missing out on. And I wouldn't say that any of the actual capstone traits are particularly bad. I think they all pretty much serve their own purpose. But man, like, I don't know, that part really gets to me. It just doesn't feel interesting in the slightest. Like,
and I want to say I don't want to like pull them all up on stream and think, but I don't know if there's any other DPS class in the game that actually has this. I think obviously Arms has like 3 of them, but I actually don't remember off the top of my head. Like I'll just like use like 2 for example. Like if you're looking at Elemental Shaman, the bottom part is all just straight into things that directly feed into things under them. There's no stats. Yep. Both DPS specs of Death Knight, it's all entirely based on the abilities near the bottom. I believe it is something unique to Arms. Typically, when we've been seeing percent stat nodes, not always true, but pretty generally, stat nodes are them running out of stuff. However, the Warrior Designer in all 3 specs, clearly the philosophy is right under the 20 node for spec tree is just purely, they want the stats to be the barrier, but it's not an interesting decision, and we'll kind of get there in a second. Arms kind of goes through the same thing, but there's just 1 less of them, so it feels less bad. But yeah. All right, so let's see where we're going. You can do rating first, and then we'll change it into more of a Mythic Plus build.
Sure. So I think at the moment, obviously, Bloodthirst, Raging Blow, you would take everything else on those 3, Improved Execute, ER, and Improved Enrage. You'll put the 2 points into Improved Bloodthirst, and initially you would probably take Sudden Death, but we will come back here in a moment.
I think we need 1 more point to move on. Initially you put it and we'll come back. Cool, okay.
Initially Sudden Death, and then we'll come back at some point.
Yeah.
Focusing Chaos for sure. At the moment, you might honestly play Single-Minded Fury and then 2 points in Frenzied Flurry. Like, there is the amount of damage Bloodthirst is doing right now. If you take this as well, the Enrage uptime, the amount of damage Bloodthirst is doing, it ends up being quite insane, and Raging Blow just doesn't keep up in the slightest. So it's almost never worth really even looking at Raging Blow. There's another reason behind it, which we'll get into in a second as well.
Okay, well, this is probably a whole ass conversation. I feel like this is an issue. Yeah. So Warriors have a single-minded Fury versus Titan's Grip thing that it has to do with like getting weapons. You're able to actually loot both weapons off the weapon table, and they have different play styles and different integrations into their class. Also, getting one-handers in this game is extremely difficult. The current only meta class that isn't a tank that wants one-handers is Frosty K, and I guarantee you they will tell you exactly how hard it is to get those weapons. Although one benefit to this is it's going to be way easier to get one-handed strength weapons with group loot next expansion than it has ever been with personal loot. So that your chance to get a weapon will go up a little higher. But also a lot of the powerful weapons are two-handers. Look at the last 2 expansions. since they added a new like rewards designer, right? Or the last two raids, like Jathis and Gavel. How much worse does it feel to play single-minded Fury when there are just cracked out two-handers that you could have in the raid?
Yeah, exactly. It really ultimately it could end up feeling bad for that reason. You kind of hope that they might just rein that in, either that or have, let's say, one-handed and two-handed versions of a similar weapon that have effectively the same effect, just to really not screw a particular couple of classes over. But yeah, it could end up being horrific. I mean, if it does end up being horrific, then you end up going on the right-hand side of the tree into Titan's Grip anyway. It would just feel worse in the current tuning, I think, but that's just numbers which are not even remotely close to being resolved.
Sure. I think another issue as well is that you are mentioning in Fury that you're going down the single-minded Fury like auto attack integration build, but you're saying that even with you going and giving yourself the best possible option to have auto attacks be the most of your damage, you would still never consider taking Berserker or using Berserker stance, correct?
Correct, but there is one way that it might work a little bit lower down on the left-hand side. The very bottom left capstone has a node which has Annihilator as a choice. At the moment, Annihilator is its own source of damage, and it doesn't scale with any of the auto-attack increases that we have available, so not Berserker Stance, not Frenzied Flurry either. If they made that scale with those two,
okay,
maybe we could be looking at it, but I think you would still need a slight Battle Stance nerf, or just make Battle Stance actually crit off auto-attacks as well, because at the moment it's just abilities. So, then Battle Stance would feel slightly less bad. I also think that Berserker Stance should be removed or redesigned. Like the original...
I agree with you.
Not original Berserker Stance, but Berserker Stance in Mists, for example, was you go into it and then you got rage when you took damage. I know Blizzard hates that kind of playstyle and idea because it's inherently working against what the goal should be. Exactly. Yeah. But if you made it not a stance, but put it on a cooldown of, let's say, a minute and a duration of, say, 5 seconds, you can carefully pick moments to benefit from it. Basically make it closer to Touch of Karma, but for resources instead of direct damage. It wouldn't make sense where it is right now. At that point, you just make Battle Stance the de facto start for both Fury and Arms.
Yeah. It would be similar to Bristling Fur in that way. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Guardian talent. Yeah, that would. Okay, I actually like that a lot.
Yeah, it would make more sense. Like I say, it wouldn't make sense where it is right now. It would need to be moved around a little, but, I think it would be a better way to resolve the stance issue, because at the moment it's just useless.
Going down further, again, this is a single-minded Fury, single-target raid build, and we'll fuck around with the other stuff later. I'm assuming Rampage.
Yeah, we'll ignore memes about Rampageless builds for now, but I know people have been looking into it, myself included, because you have Slam baseline and you can take Rend. So, yeah, we'll go Rampage. We'll take Improved Rampage and Recklessness. No brainer. We'll go back to the left side and go Blood Craze and Vicious Contempt in the middle.
Okay.
We'll take Frenzy as well, which is the left-hand side of the middle branch.
Okay.
And then we'll also take Cold Steel Hot Blood, which just has a synergy with Blood Craze since you'll be critting a little bit more often. Fresh Meat we'll ignore for now, but it could be a potential.
And now you have one.
I know this goes
against. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I know this goes against what I was saying earlier, but back up to the top right, the very top of the right-hand branch, we will take Improved Raging Blow, because you might end up needing Improved Whirlwind anyway. With this build, tell you what, let's finish it off first, and then I'll go through the reasoning.
Before you finish it off, does Raging Blow or whatever, is it Raging Blow that currly has a talent that charges you to the target?
Yeah, Reckless Abandon. It still exists.
That still exists
here as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would. Am I correct in thinking that all warriors do not want that, or maybe they're just not used to it yet? But I know it kills the shit out of people.
Oh yeah, Halondrus
don't want
was.
the NPB.
Yeah, Halondrus was really bad for it because you try and dodge a Planet Cracker Beam and then you press Raging Blow and just charge straight under it and die. Yeah. That was really fun.
I just wanted to make sure we covered that before moving on, because I don't know if Blizzard understands that not a single warrior wants to do that when they press it, except for, again, maybe PvP. But
yeah.
All right, moving on. So now we have this and we've unlocked the capstone nodes.
Yeah, so we'll come down to the capstone nodes. We'll go Critical Thinking on the bottom left. with Cadence of Fujita on the left side and Annihilator, because it kind of brings the whole thing together. Excuse me. We'll go from Recklessness, go bottom right to Valor in Victory.
Okay.
And then we could, I think you would probably end up rounding it off with Siegebreaker and Deafening Crash, and then also taking Reckless Abandon.
Okay.
And that should leave you with one more point, which would go into Improved Whirlwind in the top right.
Okay.
The reason for it is it's not currently doing it on Alpha, but the way that it reads is that without it, Whirlwind should probably cost Rage before taking that. But the problem with this build is that there was a note on the Warrior talent trees when they came out about the known issues, and it said that Annihilator in the bottom left was currently not replacing Raging Blow, which apparently it's supposed to. So your rotation, if you do this, becomes Bloodthirst and Whirlwind until you can Rampage or fill it with something else.
It's like a weird version of Devastator almost for Prot. Yeah, okay, I see that.
To an extent, yeah.
Pretty much.
Okay, so let's talk about the bottom level capstone nodes for single target and talk about stuff that... So I'm assuming you didn't even consider taking Depths of Insanity, Hack and Slash. What needs to be changed with these to be a more attractive option? Or are we going to cover that in a potential alternate build?
I mean, we can cover that now. I think you would look to take them if you were going down the right side with Titan's Grip.
Okay.
And you would be more likely probably to take Anger Management in place of Reckless Abandon. The main reason why I don't think you would go these right now is because, again, if Annihilator is supposed to completely replace Raging Blow and make Raging Blow not a thing, then Hack and Slash is completely devalued because you're not refunding anything. It's in the middle on the right, at the bottom.
Okay.
So it would completely devalue that because it's not going to refund a thing. And Depths of Insanity, you don't necessarily need the increased Recklessness duration. It's already at a point on live, mostly because of the tier set, but it's already at a point on live where you don't really feel like you absolutely have to take it in every situation. But when you have Frenzied Flurry and a very, very spammable Bloodthirst, already your Enrage uptime is going to be really good, even without a prolonged... even without like a prolonged recklessness for even more rage gen. Like, it feels mostly unnecessary. So this would kind of be for this build specifically, but Titan's Grip would still probably come down this way because you're focusing a lot less on auto attacks and more on actual damage from abilities.
Yeah, this playstyle seems kind of like, it's weird. It seems brain off, but it also...
I'm going to be completely honest, and the bit that I've tested with it so far, the only fun thing about, well, it's not even fun, but when you have Reckless Abandon and you pop Recklessness, what it does to Bloodthirst is it increases the damage of it and reduces the cooldown even further. Well, at the moment, baseline without Recklessness up, your Bloodthirst cooldown is effectively 2 globals long. So you genuinely go Bloodthirst Whirlwind until you can do Bloodthirst something else. But with it up, you can only spam Bloodthirst, and it crits a ton. It is incredibly strong. We're talking, with full CDs and Siegebreaker up, we're talking, at the moment with current tuning, 44, 45k crits, which is a large amount from some of the abilities that I've seen.
Yeah, and it also it's boosted by a large amount in Execute, too.
Exactly. It's so dumb. But the problem with that is that then probably makes it more even if you're overcapping Rage, it probably makes it more worth pressing than Rampage, unless you needed to either hold Frenzy or re-enrage yourself, which is not what Rampage should be. Like, Rampage should absolutely be effectively the focal point of Fury. It's clearly what it's designed to be. So the fact that this potential build exists where you could effectively ignore it, and like I said before, people have been trying to come up with a build that just ignores Rampage entirely and just doesn't take it, even foregoing Recklessness, and just using Slam as a filler instead because Bloodthirst does so much damage.
Yeah,
and combined, your melee attacks and your Annihilator damage comes to, at least on all the tests I've done, by representation across all, like on your damage breakdown, combined, they're about a third of your damage. And then Bloodthirst follows as another 20-30% behind that.
Yeah.
So it's 2/3 of your damage that comes from AFKing and swinging and pressing one button, which is horrific. The whole playstyle feels horrible, but it is strong.
Okay, let's... and then how would you... would you ever play Single-Minded Fury in a dungeon, ideally? Probably not, right? You'd want to...
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I suppose that if Bloodthirst is going to be this strong, then yeah, maybe. But I don't think that's the intention. I do think it is an intention is kind of split between single-minded Fury, closer to a single target, like build, I guess, if you wanted to say it, and then the right side with Titan's Grip closer to
AoE.
AoE, especially when you consider there's like more Whirlwind stuff in here as well as Ravager at the bottom.
Yeah, but that's really strange to me. It's kind of like the same thing as we were talking about with arms, where it's like depending on what weapons you have, it can kind of change your playstyle. I feel like Fury has almost the exact same problem, if that's actually correct. Okay.
Like at the moment, the problem is that what costs Titan's Grip is just the inherent power of Raging Blow by comparison to Bloodthirst. It's almost pointless going that far because Raging Blow is not going to do enough damage. It's just lacking extra power behind it. You've got Furious Blows in the general tree giving it 10%, and you've got improved Bloodthirst in the Fury tree itself giving it another 30. Whereas all Raging Blow has is in the right tree, just at the bottom of the middle section, you're looking at Wrath and Fury for 20% total.
Which
like
is
that,
less than
that
30,
should at least
right? Yeah.
that should at least be the same as improved Bloodthirst. I don't know why it isn't.
Yeah, and also this comes back to having the thing in this tree where Crushing Force currently does nothing for Fury. You could add Raging Blow to this, and that alone kind of solves this issue. Yeah,
it'll pull it into a much more competitive state, and I don't know how they've looked at that middle section of the tree and just decided to miss anything good for Fury on the general side. But yeah, I don't know. It's not in a great spot for that side. But the single-minded Fury build, I mean, it's meme, and I'm sure people will love it temporarily, but it is mind-numbing.
Okay. How would you, if you were going to do like a Titan's Grip build for Fury real quick, and also maybe have some like more AoE stuff in mind, where would you build that? I'll kind of just reset it up to the top real quick.
Sure, yeah. The start is basically the same for the top 3 rows. Still improved Raging Blow and improved Bloodthirst. Come into improved Whirlwind, Titan's Grip, Wrath and Fury 2 points. We'll go into Cruelty as well. Probably, in fact, let's stick out a Cruelty for now because I think there's probably a better way to do it. Go into Sudden Death, just below. Rampage, improved Rampage.
Frenzy?
I'm not sure about Frenzy. My problem with Frenzy is that it locks you into just attacking a singular target, which in M+ can be detrimental. It's either you attack the same target and let's say it's bolstering weak, you potentially cause an early bolstering for no reason, you just lose a bunch of haste because you had to swap target. Like, in an M+ situation, I don't want to take it, but, you know, if you have to, then you would.
Yeah, I feel like you just have to, and you would do it.
Yeah, exactly. But you would go into Recklessness for sure. Meat Cleaver as well, you would take both points.
Okay. And then now you need 2 more points to get to the capstone levels.
I still think you would take Focus and Chaos on the left-hand side. I know it's sort of trying to play into the whole auto attack thing, but it is incredibly underrated how much damage auto attacks would do if they're always hitting, especially with the amount of rage that it would then also give you across an entire dungeon. Like I said, Fury's rage doesn't really come from auto attacks, but you would notice if the majority of your auto attacks are hitting, especially on single target. Maybe less so for AoE, but there's not many other good places to put these points.
What about Fresh Meat and Mythic Plus?
Fresh Meat you would 100% take, yeah. That's just a no-brainer. Yeah. Like, at the moment, it's the only thing that really enables an opener.
Okay, cool. And then now you have unlocked the tree. I'm not sure if you would need anything else for that, but now that's actually something I really love with pathing, is you could ignore everything here on the left and still grab, Odin's Fury and Bloodborne, where, you would never consider, right, like, this stuff without the single-minded Fury build, I don't think, in these points alone. So, actually, I don't know. This could just be 5% haste, right? But, okay, where do you go here in a Mythic Plus environment? Titan's Grip.
I reckon you would probably go down to Swift Strikes to the bottom left of Recklessness.
Okay.
You would take Anger Management.
Okay.
You might take Depths of Insanity, but I'm not 100% sure. In its current tuning, Odin's Fury is really bad, and the talent below it I don't think is ever really worthwhile. I don't think a bleed-based spec for, especially when you're not actively looking to take Thunderous Roar at the bottom right of the general tree, you're never actively looking to take this. I think you're much better off taking Avatar Signet, Spear of Bastion, Elysian Might, even if it comes at the cost of removing a point in dual wield specialization. It just enables a much better burst window.
Let's focus more on like the design of Odin's Fury, because like obviously everything right now is in flux. Talent trees are just out bringing things back from Legion. Like there's all like you have to think like if Odin's Fury exists on the tree and you wouldn't take it in like an AOE scenario, I feel like then they just need to like buff it, right? Like that's like what it's designed for.
I mean, straight up they would. I just think that Bloodborne should be removed for the other side of Odin's Fury, which was the Boons of Odin and Boon of Helya, which just added much better effects to them in order to make Odin's Fury good. I think either just raw buffing the damage or adding that as the capstone below it would 100% make Odin's Fury more worthwhile.
Sure. Okay. And then where would we go with the rest of the 7 points here?
Outside of that, it's almost kind of up to interpretation. You could either go Ravager and Storm of Steel, but it would depend on Ravager's tuning, or you could just put 2 points into Depths of Insanity, I reckon.
Okay.
I feel like those would be the best options.
You can get both of those things, but yeah. And then Siegebreaker maybe? Maybe not.
I don't think Siegebreaker, just because it's inherently target capped to 5 targets. Because the Fury's Cleave won't go anywhere above that, so it'll immediately devalue in any pull that's like any bigger than that. You could take Cold Steel Hot Blood. I know there'll be a lot of people shouting at that right now, but if you are going to be playing this kind of a build, I don't think you focus on crit as much. So the actual uptime of Cold Steel Hot Blood is going to be significantly less than it could have been. I still think that the best way forward would be like Ravager, Storm of Steel, and then maybe 1 point into Depths of Insanity, or 2 points into Depths of Insanity if you're able to do that, which I think you can.
Yep.
No, 1 point.
And then I would I would love to see playing Odin's Fury on just like an increase to the capstone.
I mean, it would fit well. Another issue in particular with Spear of Bastion. If you look at the cooldowns of some of this stuff, it's 45 seconds on Odin's Fury, 45 seconds on Ravager. Recklessness is baseline 1.5, but anger management brings it down to 1 minute, and then Spear of Bastion is just 1 minute.
And Avatar at 1.5. Yeah.
Yeah, the capstone for the capstones for Spear of Bastion are really mismatched. Elysian Might is really good. Piercing Verdict is not. But an easy way to fix it would be to have the Mechanicos trait that reduces the cooldown of Spear when it hits X number of targets. And then just make it fit into the 45-second sort of... just make it fit into 45 seconds. You don't have to then take anger management, and you could free up that point for somewhere else.
Okay, I like that. What other takes for Fury do you have just in general? Besides, I mean, we've covered like a pretty good bit of it. I think we've looked at every thing on the tree. I noticed you never took War Paint, Invigorating Fury, or Concussive Blows. That's, I mean, specifically Concussive Blows is like very fight specific, but I don't even know if the power level of that 1 point, if you were taking this purely for damage, would even be worth it. And then the same thing here, where you're talking about a defensive thing. You're using every single point on this tree for throughput currently. There's no world based on the amount of total points you have where you would ever take these talents, even though they're actually pretty strong. Like, this is an extremely high uptime on a 10% DR, right? But like sure. It's just throughput, right? And like like tanks are their own thing, healers are their own thing. It's more normal and more part of their kit and their playstyle for tanks and healers to consider more defensive options. A DPS player is not going to take a defensive thing unless it's required of them based on a certain fight, but then they also feel bad because they're doing worse damage. I think that's always a weird thing. What do you guys think could be a potential solution for that?
It's a really difficult one. Honestly, I think I would just like to see them get rid of, in the similar way that they have done for arms, just get rid of one of these 2 point talent nodes. Because it feels like, and then connect it in in better ways, I guess.
Which 2-point
it
talent
is
nodes exactly?
difficult to explain.
Just removing more 2-pointers from the tree?
Just the stat ones. The stat ones in particular. Just choose one of them, get rid of it, and then connect the middle to the sides in the same way
Just
that they
like
currently
arms.
are, just with one stat instead.
It's literally the exact same thing as arms, right? You
More
would
or
just
less.
want, yeah. So, okay, that kind of makes sense. It also gives you some more options within the capstone area, and maybe the ability to go up. Okay. Critcake, do you have any takes on Fury at all, really? Or are you ready to move on to arms?
I'm ready to move on to arms. But yeah, I think the opportunity cost of taking Warpaint is just too high. And it sucks because we all want it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we move on to arms, last note on Fury. Fury, this expansion, was like a consistent damage class. Bursty and Mythic Plus, decently tanky, only have gotten more tanky now. What is this class compared to Shadowlands, and how is this going to play in a raid? What kind of a raid spot is this going to have? What kind of niches do they fill that other melee DPS classes might not?
Consistent cleave has always been their biggest niche, but it's not so much a niche anymore when you consider like Survival Hunter as a prime example, or even Outlaw Rogue, which is kind of insane. It's really difficult to see what kind of niche they actually do have now, especially if a predominant single target DPS build is going to become a build which doesn't have any burst behind it whatsoever and is like a third based around auto attacks. Like, Fury has never really had a firm niche, not since it actually had a good execute in Legion. The moment that got removed and more push towards arms direction, Fury effectively lost any kind of identity outside of we do okay damage all the time.
And that is a powerful niche. Like a class that has, technically doing the same damage, that has massive peaks and valleys with cooldown windows, versus a class that is kind of more of a stable line. It can sometimes not be fun because typically having big cooldowns up also means it's more fun to play your character. But those classes are excellent to fit alongside of them because it can fill the roles of actually being able to kill things. Like, I always refer to this. Did you raid Eternal Palace, both of you? I think you did.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember when you were doing early P3, so before the last phase in Mythic Ashar, we had to kill those 3 ads on top of the thing? That was assigning cooldowns for that was a nightmare. And you wanted people to burst certain ones so they got killed faster, but you actually ended up finding out that you didn't need as much burst, and just a class like Shadow Priest was just so consistent on every one that the more classes you added like that, the easier it was to kill all of them in time instead of just a few specific ones. Fury Warrior kind of fits into that. But the biggest problem I see is a lot of classes have the same choice you guys have on the left, where it's okay, single target, again, boring playstyle, whatever, but single target optimal damage build here. AoE optimal damage build here. The only difference is you guys are the only class, Spec actually, in the game that has to choose between having entirely different weapons collected and equipped to do either, potentially, to be fully optimal. And that feels really strange. We've kind of talked about it a few times throughout the whole conversation with Warrior, because this is clearly they are doubling down on this. But I just think it kind of affects every class, or at least Arms and Fury both, kind of negatively. And I don't really know how I feel about that. It's hard enough to get one mythic weapon, right? And the fact that you might get sat on a boss because you don't have one-handers or something where someone else loots them, and same thing with Mythic Plus, it just seems really weird.
I feel like the right side just needs almost an entire redesign. I mean, it just adding more damage to Raging Blow alone would help. Like I said before, it would help Titan's Grip be at least probably even equal to the current single-minded Fury build on a single target scenario.
Yeah,
it's just such a heavy damage mismatch at the moment. But the fact that single-minded Fury and Titan's Grip are this far down in the tree and present a relatively late choice, I think is bad, when they could just be a choice node much further up, and you could then kind of play into whichever side you would want to get. It almost weapons,
seems like that's what should be where Raging Blow is. It's improved execute and improved enrage moved, and it's Bloodthirst, and then just straight up right under it is Titan's Grip, Single-Minded Fury, and then on the Titan's Grip side you have Raging Blow, and on the Single-Minded Fury you have improved Bloodthirst. And then you can be a lot more creative with these left and right side trees where they're not necessarily fully committing to going down both.
I love that idea.
I also think that the improved Rampage point just below Rampage is entirely wasted and just shouldn't be there when it should just be baked into Rampage anyway. That to me just reeks of them running out of ideas and thinking, let's split Rampage in two just to
dude,
cover ground.
have you seen Ret Paladin? Do you play Ret Paladin at all?
Yeah, I have done a bit, yeah.
Dude, they gave them Avenging Wrath. They made them pick a point later to make it a 2-minute, and then in their class tree they give them a choice node. They give them a choice node to give them back the crit and the extra damage increase from just baseline Avenging Wrath. Like,
oh my god,
like, dude. Yeah, so like there's
incredible.
there's trees that have done this worse, but this is I would agree with you in the assumption that this is absolutely a running out of ideas situation, because there's no actual interesting choice here. It's just they just needed a Rampage button.
If they really wanted to go into the whole right side as slightly more AoE focused, then a pretty simple option, which I know a lot of people might be a fan of. There's a Torghast power called Fan of Long Swords, where every time you press Rampage, it whirlwinds for you. And then it will give you the whirlwind cleave stack so that you effectively just need to do a single target rotation. And as long as you can hit Rampage within that whirlwind window, you just sustain your own cleave without ever having to actively press whirlwind.
Ooh, that sounds
And
banger.
that, in place of improved Rampage, would fit a AoE style of tree if they really wanted to invest in it down that side, and I feel like it would be quite
Dude,
fun.
you are farming pogs right now in chat. That's insane. Look at all these fucking warriors, man. They are pogging out of their minds. Okay, Blizzard, take note. Take note to the chat when he said that. That actually almost never happens when they pog like that. They're super
We love that
pessimistic.
power in Torghast.
Yeah, it is so sick.
Dude, that's actually like, I mean, they already hard destroyed Torghast like ever really being good content when they made it something that everyone had to do every week. But like, there's a ton of actual really cool Torghast abilities, a lot of which they've actually added to classes to support them in their defense. But they definitely should not let that go under-realized, because it seems like they're not continuing to develop Torghast, even though I still think it's a potential excellent content option if you just don't make players ever have to do it outside of fun or to challenge themselves. But I mean, these Torghast powers in there are banger. Some of them are really good. So I'm actually really glad you brought that up.
I do feel like a lot of people overlook them as potential talent options, because some of them are ridiculously busted and some of them are like strong and fun, but within scope that they could be balanced in the actual version of the game, if you want to call it
not
that.
necessarily strong, just more like gameplay fun, and then just tune it for it being in the actual game. Like, I'm trying to think, whenever people just say put strong ones in the game, I think of corrosive dosage with Monk, and it's like, dude, like imagine adding like something where a monk like vivifies themselves on like a 30-second ICD. Like, that would be so fucking dog shit in the actual game.
The shaman healing rain damage one, which I can't remember the name of.
Acid rain. Yeah. All right, cool. On to Arms Warrior. Fury needs a few alterations, but I think in general, I mean, it actually looks like, I feel like if they make a couple of those changes, Fury will definitely be solid. Like, it'll be good.
Yeah. No major complaints with it.
All right, moving on to Arms, Critcake. This is you building initially for... Now, it's weird when you mention single target, because obviously Arms niche so much in raids is that they're just such a powerful target swapping, sweeping strikes, like 2-target cleave class. Outside, so Arms is never as black and white. It's just pure single target and AoE. In fact, I would say in raid bosses in general, the amount of raid bosses that are just pure single target is very little, right? It's like there's always like a second target that spawns that has to be killed, and sweeping strikes is efficient boss damage while you're killing the priority target, or it's just like a multi-target situation like most fights, which is great. Arms has always had a ton of power here. They have an increased ability to execute. Test of Might is back. I'm interested in where you take us, but just show me a little bit more from like a raid build. Certainly, I would just say general for raiding. So like including things like sweeping strikes, for example, would be very normal.
Okay, so of course Mortal Strike, Overpower, Gun on the left, take Barbaric Training, Fervor as well.
Okay.
Go back.
Oh my God, Fueled for Violence in this tree. Okay,
No,
never
no.
mind. Yeah, I'm sorry. Just okay. Where are we going after Fervor for battle?
Yeah. Tactician, Improved Execute. Oh yeah, you can go down and get Sweeping Strikes as well.
Sure, but which one do we grab? Sudden Death or Martial
Both.
Press? Both. Okay. And then now you have spent 8. Let's actually go on here, but I'm assuming you're going to take Exhilarating Blows, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so now we've taken 9 at the top. That's a pretty healthy number. Worst case scenario for a class right now is 15 points in the up top area, which is kind of cringe. But you guys are spending only 9 of like required stuff, which is really, really good. And you basically get every single talent that isn't one you will never select for any reason. And concussive blows, again, very, very unique to a certain fight, and probably still not good even throughput wise. So, and 1.5 isn't enough to actually allow you to kick an extra cast usually. So very weird. Where are we going from here?
Get 2 in Impale. And 2 in Improved Overpower. Overpower again, Dreadnought.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's go back to the middle. Get Sweeping Strikes. I think you take the left one here, but I'm not sure whether Exploit the Weakness or Punishment is going to be the best. Exploit the Weakness is probably way too strong on the alpha right now. The proc rate is much higher than intended, I think.
It's horribly bugged on PTR right now. The way it's meant to work is it's supposed to be 3% more rage for the ability you use. So a 30 rage Mortal Strike is supposed to become like a 30.9 or 31% like chance per rage.
What?
31 rage effectively is what
Okay.
it's supposed to be, right? But if you take Exploit the Weakness, instead it changes Tactician to a 4% chance per rage to reset Overpower.
Oh, okay.
Which turns
yeah.
a 30 rage ability into a 120% chance.
Okay, got it. Yeah, that's okay. So exploit, but like I think this is actually a cool choice node though, because punishment is absolutely a just it's just condemn, but baked into like the actual class, and they took away the shadow element because that probably doesn't fit Warriors class fantasy. This is definitely, I don't know how it'll currently, we'll see like where Execute kind of plays within arms, but this is definitely something that's really powerful. There's outside of like Sylvanas will be the first thing everyone points to for things like careful aim or condemn being like, having a high power level because of the boss's HP. But even on a lot of fights outside of a 5-minute sim, getting from 100 to 80 and for target swapping can be like really good. So I like that you guys got that back in this expansion.
Yep. We got on the right side now.
Okay.
So the right side is actually where most of our power comes, I think. So Colossus Smash is there, Test of Might is there. So big Test
Love
of
that.
Might.
Okay.
Yep. Mortal Strike, Improved Mortal Strike. I take 2 of that. Anger Management and Test of Might, they go hand in hand. Take Juggernaut as well.
Okay. You have unlocked the capstone node already with an extra point, but you're saying you would even spend an extra one up here? Okay.
Yep. Take 2 in, what's it called, that crit thing? Critical Thinking. Now, Skull Banner isn't that great,
Yeah.
but if it was pure single target or just 2 targets, I guess you would pick it.
Yeah, see, that's... Oh, man, I kind of want to come back to this because this is such an interesting thing. And this is what Warriors will... What's going to feel really bad is if pathing through Skull Banner is the overall rate increase, but is a significant, not damage reduction for you, but a reduction in fun. Like you are taking away an ability that is actually fun to play with or fun to press, or a passive that interacts with your gameplay, but choosing to get something that is only a higher potential number value by buffing other people. I think that's always a weird choice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you said you do want to take Skull Banner for now? What would the alternative be? Would it be Warbreaker?
Yeah. So Warbreaker is obviously Colossus Smash for an AoE Colossus Smash. So if there are multiple targets, you're gonna want Warbreaker.
Okay, so let's just play more of like a normal raid boss. So let's just play Skull Banner, and then do you grab Exploiter?
Yeah.
Great.
And then I would go down the middle, get 2 points there, get Blade Storm, and then it's the middle one. So
okay.
that one.
So
Probably blunt. You probably want the blunt one.
ugh. Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
having blunt instruments with Test of Might sounds like a no-brainer.
Yep.
But dude, what happens when you loot an axe? Are you gonna want to have both, and like you want to play and then there's like a fight where it's execute, and then you don't play Test of Might, I guess, and then I don't know, dude. This seems so strange to me. We talked about this earlier, but blunt instruments versus sharpened blades. Is there any argument for who are they making this for? Is there someone that like just fresh got off of Classic, and they're like working on these new talent trees, and they're like, oh wow, I looted an axe, now I can like change to sharpened blades. Like that's super sick. I feel like most people are gonna be like, man, this like build with Test of Might is sick, and blunt instruments is awesome, but I just did an axe, and like I'm not even on an execute fight, so like this doesn't feel that good. I don't know. Well, just to finalize our conversation with this, I feel like it's a problem.
Yeah, nobody asked for this. Literally
No.
0 people asked for this. I don't know why it's in the game. It's a horrible design.
Yeah, so I think almost everyone. We agreed on this earlier, right? Like the choice of these 2 text boxes is good, but the having it being tied to what weapon you're using is bad. That's just the thing that I think universal. No one likes this. Please remove.
I also think its placement in this tree is also bad. I don't like the idea of having to go through Bladestorm in order to hit this for for potentially single target. Because Bladestorm is an absolute last resort button. It doesn't do good damage on single target at all.
Yeah, it's just a free damage button when you're out of rage, which is never.
And you're
at the
also
moment.
going through Verse to get that as well. So you're like almost spending like 4 points to get the thing you want. Where if you compare that to like a lot of other classes DPS trees, outside of taking there are some classes that are like this, but like, you know, when they're going to the bottom, they're picking the ability and then they're picking things that interact with the ability. They're picking Primordial Wave and they're picking things that go alongside Primordial Wave, or they're picking Ascendance and they're grabbing Further Beyond and Oath of the Farseer for, like, you know, just giving you extra stats during it. They all double down and buy into each other. The Flame Shock path leads you down into, you know, giving you Maelstrom for Flame Shock, into Wind Speakers or Skybreakers. They're like, everything's there at the bottom of the tree, and every decision makes sense when it leads into the other decision. Meanwhile, even though I think Warriors sound like they're going to be pretty powerful, you're having to spec into Verse randomly, and then grabbing Bladestorm, which you might not necessarily want, into Blunt Instruments. That seems like the capstone levels of these trees. While I understand they are trying, like most trees, to put some points down here that don't allow you to just get every single capstone. So they want, like, the 2-point things act as a barrier, but I think they could just be more interesting and potentially some of these lower talents, and then remove versatility. Like if you want this to be the exploiter route, and then this is like the fatality thing, and we'll talk about like Battlelord fatality in a second, but like have the opening be that thing. So when you're going down below it, you're buffing and like doubling down on the playstyle you're already going for. It just seems like these are super restrictive and they don't feel good to select at all, especially this late in the tree.
A way to resolve this, I don't mean to hijack the whole
you're
arms
good.
talk, but a way to resolve it is fairly simple. Like sharpened blades and blunt instruments, regardless of their design, it feels like it has no spot being a capstone to Bladestorm when you have Unhinged, which is reliant on Bladestorm, and Merciless Bone Grinder, same thing. So my idea previously was it's effectively 4 points that you're putting in there, which would be enough to go left side, get Deft Experience, Battlelord, and Fatality. But what you could do is move Exploiter to be a choice node with Fatality, and move the choice node for Sharpened Blades and Blunt Instruments to below Skullbanner and Warbreaker. And then you don't have to come down this middle section. You can go both left and right side instead, and
I like
you can
that.
just grab both.
And you already have left side unlocked because you're going through Dreadnought, and then you would only path down the middle if you were clearly making AoE type decisions to grab Unhinged or Merciless with this. Yeah, I mean, this is weird. This being in the middle was like, basically their idea was, okay, you have 3 total like major capstones. These are both just tangents off of Bladestorm. But it's like, okay, Blunt Instruments, Exploiter, and Fatality are the capstones. And then they just had to put this here, and they had to put Bladestorm somewhere else. It definitely seems super weird. That is you're farming Pogs. That's good.
Also in their current form, Exploiter is just potentially, depending on the tuning, infinitely better than Fatality, but I guess the decision would come down to how long is the execute phase going to be. If it's short, Fatality will probably have more value if you're not getting many executes, and Exploiter for the other side, a much longer execute phase. It actually is a good choice between the two based on, a boss's HP.
Nice. And if you were to talent out of Blunt Instruments and get away from Valor and Victory, and you were to like kind of move where this was, you said you'd go down Deft Experience, grab Battlelord, and then this could be moved here, and then Fatality made with a choice mode with that. That's fine. But that feels a lot better. Having to go down and path through Bladestorm to get something and grab Verse as well on the way down just feels really bad. I like that suggestion a lot. How would you change this? For arms, this is like a general raid situation. How would you change this for like a Mythic Plus build? Is there a ton of changes, or is it kind of more just on the stuff at the end?
Not too many, but so if you take the points off the left side there, the bottom left side.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would take Blood Surge, which is the
Right here.
Oh yeah, you said yeah, Blood Surge, and then take the verse again. Blade Storm, probably blunt instruments if you can. Yeah, if you have a blunt weapon.
We can move some points up there. So probably would you?
Oh yeah, it's the Mortal Strike.
Would you? Sorry, say that again.
It's the improved Mortal Strike. I would remove that.
Okay, improved Mortal Strike. What about Juggernaut though? Even still, you think you would have Juggernaut in like an AoE Mythic Plus scenario?
Since you have Massacre, you should be able to sweep. Well, you should be able to snipe a lot of executes. I think on a higher level key, you could probably make good use of Juggernaut. On a lower level key, probably not.
Okay.
You would definitely take Cleave.
Cleave, and then the Cleave node. Was it the cooldown of Cleave matter?
I don't think it's good. I don't think you actually need a lower cooldown on Cleave. It doesn't do much damage in itself. It does apply deep wounds, which is the main. I think that's the main strength of it.
I also moved off of Skull Banner into Warbreaker. I assume that's what you would want to do.
Yeah. Yep. No, I think. Do you have 1 point left?
Yep.
So that's either what's it called, the bleed talent, Bloodborne, or Exploiter. I don't know how strong Exploiter will be, but Bloodborne will add to your rend and bleed AoE.
Okay. What about, where is it? Bone Grinder.
Oh, Bone Grinder, crap. That should be there as well. It's in the middle.
Oh, right here. Yeah,
sorry.
Merciless Bone Grinder.
Yeah.
We have like some overpower stuff over here that seems like it's not really pathing to anything and might be taken off. Also, Skull Splitter is an option, one off of Impale.
Skull Splitter's
it's sudden death.
tremendous.
Oh, Sudden Death.
It's
just, up here.
Yeah.
So one off of Sudden Death and put that into which one?
Merciless Bone Grinder.
Okay. So then you're still playing Blunt Instruments, which obviously synergizes with Warbreaker. Okay, this looks... I don't know. And then through the tree, you also have Thunderclap, Blood and Thunder, right? With Rend?
Yes, and Rend. Yeah, that's it.
So I guess the question I'm asking to you guys is what... let's, I guess, start with Mythic Plus because we're here. From what ARMS is in Mythic Plus at the moment, what does ARMS look like in Dragonflight in comparison? Is it stronger, weaker? Does it do something that the Spec does not do now? Or is it similar?
It has the potential to be quite significantly stronger. I think the weakness of ARMS at the moment is after its cooldowns, it effectively just has no damage whatsoever.
Yeah.
But with Cleave being... At the moment, the problem with Cleave and why we can't take it is because it shares the same talent row with Breaker, is that right?
Yeah, Warbreaker, that's it.
Yeah. So you lose out on constantly cleaving deep wounds onto an unlimited number of targets. Even if Cleave itself doesn't do a whole lot of damage, it's basically just sapped away all of our consistent damage. That on its own wouldn't be enough, but then you add in Blood and Thunder with Rend, you add in potentially Thunderous Roar if you wanted that as well as a bunch of talents that do synergize with bleeds as well, like Bloodborne on the left side, potentially Bloodletting on the bottom left if you wanted to go that far. And suddenly you've got a lot of really consistent damage, because especially with Test of Might behind it, those bleeds will hit pretty hard. The burst is gone a little bit, because if you play Test of Might, you're not Blade Storming inside of Warbreaker, and that's where the burst was. But that's fine, because then Blade Storm just becomes something that you use under Test of Might instead, like you did in BFA. So the consistent damage is much better. The burst is down slightly, potentially, but a lot of that will come down to how quickly and how high you can stack Test of Might more than anything. It's kind of angling more back into the BFA style of M plus arms, which was just spread dots, keep dots up, let dots do damage, which is great for high keys when things take a significant amount of time to die.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you just never run out of AoE damage with this build. It's very consistent.
Yeah, I also, dude, in Mythic Plus, I also think something that's like low-key nice is like, I think you're definitely going to be able to path down to get like Thunderclap and Blood and Thunder, but I think you could also grab, what is it? Oh no, you can't get the Leech because it's one-handers. Dude, I think it's so crazy, like just to think that like any DPS class will just have 10% Leech at all times. Like that will do so much healing in like a dungeon.
Yep.
Obviously, you guys won't have that. I guess you probably won't even have the 5% either, because you.
No, you would have to pick Berserker, which
is like, and you guys are the spec that needs the Leech much more than Fury too. So that's rough.
Yeah. Maybe it's a fueled by violence angle.
Oh no.
Again, I really think Fueled by Violence, they put it in multiple trees, so like they're committed to it being there. And if that's the case, just make it also work with Rend. That helps Prot a lot, and that also helps Arms.
Yeah, it would do for sure.
Does Rend snapshot? It doesn't, right? It's
No, all of the dots are dynamic.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like you'd still have like some pretty fat ass Rends, because like you're just gonna be like doing the Blood and Thunder thing. You're gonna finish your Warbreaker. Your Test of Might's gonna like carry your dots through the rest of the pack. You are gonna like have like just kind of a lot of damage all the time. And it seems like okay. So finishing the Mythic Plus thought though, what does Arms Warrior feel like in Raid, compared to what it is normally? Is it it's been the Execute class, less so this expansion than in the previous, with Lucid Dreams specifically. What is an Arms Warrior? When are you bringing in Arms Warrior? What is their niche that they do better than other classes?
I think the priority damage is really, really good as Arms, and the execute damage, and that seems to be what this tree is focusing on. And I think a lot of people appreciate that. People want Arms to have this execute. What's the word I'm looking for? Identity.
Oh yeah. The OG execute class.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. You alluded to it earlier, but it does feel like Arm's identity is just slowly drifting away, because now Unholy DK is kind of king of execute at the moment, if I'm not mistaken. They are nuts when it comes to execute, and Arms, it's okay. But the problem with the current version of Arms is in execute, your execute isn't spammed. You're not really, executing. You're not doing the damn. You're still pressing Mortal Strike as priority, and that is horrible. But with this, and especially with Exploiter being back, like I can't overemphasize how good Exploiter actually will be. It causes some big damage. You're still going to have to press Mortal Strike, but at least you're putting executes into it to make it happen. And the Mortal Strike hits like a truck. Just to give, I know numbers aren't final, but just to give some context for numbers, doing some testing earlier with a similar single target build sort of test of Might, Exploiter, all the good stuff. And we were looking at execute crits without CDs of 110k-ish, and Mortal Strike crits without CDs of 130-ish. With CDs, execute was critting over 200k.
I also wonder, we haven't really talked about Juggernaut other than it's like potentially really powerful, but you guys who actually have practical raiding experience playing with Juggernaut, do you guys remember the times where you had to stop damage on something at a certain part of the fight, or you had to get off the boss to do a mechanic, and the 8-second Juggernaut thing actually being kind of a pain to keep up? I absolutely remember there being fights where like we would have our warrior stay on the boss, and it was like super spooky, like I think it's like kind of an annoying thing to manage, but if it was longer than 8 seconds, I feel like it would take the intricacy out of playing with it.
I think every time I looked at Warcraft logs, the death stats, warrior is often, especially Arms, has often been on the top of the death stat, and then I think things like these, it's the warrior brain.
Yeah, I mean it's warrior.
Yeah,
it's similar to like the like your eyes glow red when you press something like Breath of Cindergosa, because you can't miss a single GCD and you're just like full on focusing it until it's over. It's like that with Juggernaut. It's like your notice and your awareness for everything else just goes away, and you just full warrior brain Juggernaut all the way until the boss dies. And then if you ever die, it's so punishing. Or if you or if you have to get off the boss or like move away and like kill another target, it's just, I like the intricacy of keeping it up. That's fine. It's just like it definitely promotes some weird gameplay sometimes.
I think you could do with a longer duration. 8 seconds is too short.
I mean, the old version of Juggernaut in Legion was 99 stacks on the same duration, which made sense. If you were punished by a mechanic, then you would lose it and potentially not go mad. If you were able to sustain it, then it would be sick. If it's going to be only 20 stacks, then the duration can come up to not be as punishing, because losing those stacks, like, you don't have many that you're going to be capping out with to begin with, so having to rebuild them again would just feel awful when it's already going to be like only 20 as opposed to 99 previously.
I still think it's going to be like so good though. Like when the boss is like below 10%, I think you're absolutely going to be like top damage.
Yeah.
I think Unholy will probably win out closer to 35% before you get stacks though. Like that's the other thing they gave them. Where is it? Here it is. so outside of just obviously having Soul Reaper currently, and their current 4-piece, they're also giving them Soul Reaper, Scourge Strike, Festering, and Death Coil are also just doing 20% additional damage below 35% health. So they're also doubling down on like their execute as well. So yeah, it's gonna be a nice battle to see who's getting in the raid to do stuff like that.
Hell yeah, a nice arms race that arms might lose.
Yeah. All right. I think we're pretty much done. Do you guys have any other takes about any of the DPS specs that you want to get out?
Yeah, Bladestorm. Bladestorm, we will use Bladestorm on single target, and that's because of Signet, right? I don't like the idea of the correct play will often be to just cast Bladestorm to proc Signet and then cancel Bladestorm. I don't think that's obvious to the average player.
Yeah. I suppose what makes it even worse is that when you compare it to Fury, again, assuming that Ravager is going to proc Signet at all, Fury potentially has all 3 ways to proc Signet between Avatar and the general tree, Wreck as its own cooldown, and then Ravager. But Arms, you either take Bladestorm and then have 2 because you took Avatar, or you don't take the only real cooldown that you have in your spec tree, and then you only have Avatar. That would feel really bad to go from like Fury having 2 or 3 ways to proc Signet, and then Arms potentially only having 1.
Yeah. Also,
Ravager would help.
it's just a Signet issue. It just goes back to Signet.
Yeah.
Like Signet and Bladestorm just don't work.
I almost lost my mind seeing that we were still getting it in Dragonflight, because personally I don't even think iterating on it is right. I think just the straight removal of it would be better, and then make something more interesting.
All right, hell yeah. One other thing with Arms I want to point out, though, I don't think we mentioned any of these one time. So we talked about Sudden Death, Concussive Blows, Fueled for Violence, Fracture, Skull Splitter, Deadly Calm, Improved Sweeping Strikes, Collateral Damage, Storm of Swords. Just naming things that we never spoke about one time.
Yeah.
Do these need to be buffed? Are they bad choices? Do they not make sense for their spot in the tree, or is it just there are other more powerful options, or would you pick them based on the scenario?
I feel like Skullsplitter and Fracture, the 2 on the left, are really weird. Dan tested a bit, so maybe he has an opinion on those.
Outside of there's a current bug with Fracture, it's just not working properly. It's like munching even more of the duration than it should. It's a completely pandemicked and refreshed Rend and Deep Wounds, when they're affected by Fracture, should go down to about 3-4 seconds or so, maybe a bit less when you consider the global. At the moment, it's going down to less than a second, and I don't think you're getting all of the damage out of it, so at the moment it's just horribly bugged. But the issue with it is maybe on 2 targets, but I feel like you end up making a choice between anger management and Test of Might, and then trying to go for a bleed build on the left side of the tree. I don't think it's strong enough at the moment. Like, the bleeds collectively do a lot, but on 1 or 2 targets, it's not enough to compete to just the sheer size of crits that you're going to be getting out of Mortal Strike execute when you get there. And I mean, even further a battle, like your main filler being Whirlwind with a slam, it's graced by an absolute ton of damage increases to both Slam and Whirlwind individually that I don't think a pure bleed build is ever going to make sense. It is just not strong at the moment. Also, Fracture, it loses value the moment you go more than 2 targets, because the only way that you can hit more targets with it is by obviously sweeping the Skull Splitter. I don't know. Like, I don't think it's great. I think the bleeds themselves would just need to be buffed more. Like, Deep Wounds in particular doesn't hit particularly hard right now. Rend is okay, but Deep Wounds is pretty bad.
Okay. What do you think about, is there a scenario where you talent into improved sweeping strikes, and if not, should the duration be buffed or should it be reimagined?
Improved sweeping strikes, I don't see anyone using that, no. Collateral damage, yes, I think that does have some use. There is like an alternative build you can try and do for like AoE, or even 2 targets. You can take collateral damage.
Okay.
You can take the one underneath as well, the Storm of Swords, I think it's called, yeah. You would stack this collateral damage with sweeping strikes,
I see.
right? Yeah,
Mhm.
and then you'd also Bladestorm, and then use your Merciless Bone Grinder to get like 1 massive Whirlwind out.
Okay. I kind of like that. That seems like it would do
Yeah.
a ton, right? 200% more, and right after Bladestorm, you just send out and it also gets buffed by this.
Yeah, so it's a lot of multipliers there. Problem is this that then your favorite battle kind of doesn't make sense because Whirlwind replaces your slam as a filler when you have favorite battle. So you would revert to using slam again while Whirlwind is on cooldown.
I noticed that there's not a single thing buffing slam on this whole tree, right?
I think the
Barbaric
one
training on the top left is
Yeah.
the only thing that buffs it on this tree. But on the general tree, it has two things that buff it.
Yeah, I know. That's what I found interesting. Is it's like that's still a button you're pressing,
It's
right?
just mad.
But
Yeah.
that's so weird. Just doesn't seem like there's any integration with it at all. That's fine. All right, I think we're good. I think we talked it all out. All right, so thank you guys for being on. Hope to see some arms changes soon, or see some warrior changes. I don't really know what needs to be changed more than. God, it's so hard to say that they should get power level, or they should get like more points for choice in their tree when like the power level's so good. It feels like the only way you'd get like real choice is with the reduction of power level, and I'm not sure if that's a trade you'd want to make. But all the specs look like they could be viable, which is good, and they seem like better versions of them of their current selves, which is I think at the very end of the day, that's what you're asking for. Not every class currently has that. So you are better versions of your current self. You can use legendary or talent combinations you haven't before. It seems interesting. Signet's an issue that they already even mentioned. They're just fully deliberating how it would be. The bottom of the class tree is getting moved or worked on. I think Warriors are definitely in a good spot. I was nice to hear on Monday when they moved the other class that was supposed to come out this week a week off, and I think like they saw the way that Shaman was received, and it was just like, man, such a good tree. They even had to nerf it. It was so good.
Yeah.
And then they released 2 in 1 week, and they were a problem. And like both of them had a lot of problems. And they're like, and originally this week was supposed to have 2 classes plus Holy Paladin, I believe, and they were both pushed off a week. And the reason being is it's much easier to focus on one class a week and make sure the first impression and it gets the most work done and a lot of focused feedback instead of it being split in a few different directions. So that's definitely definitely feels good for Warrior. Kind of gets the spotlight this week. Plus, I just feel like it's so strong, especially Prot. I think Prot got the biggest glow up. Prot Paladin seems like fucking insane. Or Prot Warrior.
Prot's insane.
Yeah, Prot is so insane.
I think in terms of pure DPS, Arms is a little bit more exciting than Fury because it's coming back to an identity that it's been missing for a while, and people are going to be psyched to see it back just with it doing big numbers, like execute focused, massive numbers. That's why people loved Arms to begin with, and it'll be kind of sick to see that back if it does work out.
All right, nice talking to you guys. Hopefully we don't have to have too many conversations because that means that like actually no. The more conversations we have, the more changes there are. Changes are probably better than they are worse. So who knows? We'll speak sometime in the future. I'll leave this call open. I believe everyone got alpha. Dan already had it, and then I think Crit and Pika got it yesterday, and then everyone else is chilling. So you guys actually have the ability to like iterate on the feedback and like talk on the feedback. All right, sweet man. All right, thanks for talking, guys. I'm gonna head out.
Appreciate it, bro.
See ya.
Yep, see ya. Oh, whew. That was a long one, but it was good. These warrior streams these warrior talents are pretty sweet, chat. These are looking quite solid. Good time to be a warrior.